The baby wasn't breathing. Anna Whitmore pressed her trembling fingers against the infant's tiny chest, snow howling through the gaps in the ranch house walls. Behind her, the dying woman's last words still echoed. "Promise me. Promise you'll keep her safe." Jack Monroe stood frozen in the doorway, his weathered face carved with a terror Anna had never seen before. This wasn't supposed to happen. None of it. She was the barren widow sent here as a joke, exiled to marry a broken man in the middle of nowhere. But now, with this child's life hanging by a thread, everything she thought she knew about her cursed existence was about to shatter. Stay with me until the very end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this journey travels. The whispers had started 3 years ago, the day they buried Thomas. Anna Whitmore stood in the parlor of her family's boarding house, her black mourning dress collecting dust motes in the afternoon light, streaming through the lace curtains. Outside, Cedar Ridge, Wyoming went about its business, wagons rattling down Main Street, the blacksmith's hammer ringing its eternal song, children laughing as they chased a hoop past the general store. Life continued, indifferent to her grief, indifferent to her shame. "You understand this is for the best." Samuel's voice cut through her thoughts like a blade through butter. Her brother stood by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel, the picture of patriarchal authority in his pressed suit and carefully trimmed beard. At 32, he'd inherited their father's boarding house and their father's certainty that he knew what was best for everyone under his roof. Anna didn't turn to face him. She kept her eyes on the street, watching Mrs. Henderson from the millinery cross toward the church, her skirt swishing with the kind of purpose that came from having a place in the world. "I understand that you want me gone." "Anna," Samuel's tone sharpened. "That's not fair, and you know it." "Fair?" Now she did turn, and something in her movement made Samuel take a half step back. Fair would have been letting me grieve in peace. Fair would have been telling the church ladies to mind their own business. Fair would have been you giving Thomas a child before he died. Samuel's words landed like stones in still water, each one sending ripples of hurt across Anna's carefully maintained composure. "You were married for 2 years, Anna. 2 years and nothing. People talk. They say it's a curse that you're barren," Anna finished for him, her voice flat. "You can say the word, Samuel. Lord knows everyone else in this town has." A muscle worked in Samuel's jaw. Outside, the town clock struck 3, its bells marking another hour of Anna's exile. Because that's what this was, really. Not an arrangement, not an opportunity, an exile dressed up in the respectable clothes of frontier pragmatism. "Jack Monroe needs a wife," Samuel said, as if he hadn't just gutted his sister with the town's cruelest gossip. "His ranch is falling apart. He's too proud to hire help, but a wife, that's different. That's respectable." "A wife he doesn't want." Anna moved to the window seat, sinking onto the cushion their mother had embroidered 20 years ago, back when the world still made sense. "A wife you're paying him to take." Samuel had the decency to flush. "I'm providing a dowry. It's customary. You're paying him $200 and 3 breeding heifers to take the cursed widow off your hands." Anna's laugh was bitter. "Don't dress it up as custom, Samuel. We both know what this is." The boarding house creaked around them, full of the sounds of other people's lives. On the floor above, the Mitchells' baby cried, a sound that had become Anna's particular torture over the past year. Every wail was a reminder of what her body had failed to do, what her marriage had failed to produce. The church ladies had been subtle at first, their questions about children wrapped in honeyed concern. But after Thomas died, thrown from a horse on a clear Tuesday morning, his neck broken before he hit the ground, the subtlety had evaporated like rain on hot stone. She was cursed, unnatural, a woman whose body refused its most basic purpose. And Samuel, with his boarding house full of paying guests and his new wife expecting their first child, couldn't afford the stain of her presence. "The wagon leaves at dawn," Samuel said quietly. "I've arranged everything. Monroe's ranch is 3 days north, up in the high country near the foothills. It's isolated." Isolated. Anna tasted the word. "You mean it's far enough away that Cedar Ridge won't have to look at me anymore?" "I mean, it's a fresh start. Samuel crossed to her, and for a moment Anna saw a flash of the brother she'd climbed trees with as a child, before their father's death had turned him hard and practical. You can't stay here, Anna. You must see that. Every day you're a reminder of failure, of death, of everything wrong with a woman who can't fulfill her purpose. Anna stood, smoothing her skirts with hands that had learned not to tremble. I understand perfectly, Samuel. Don't worry, I'll play my part. She left him standing there and climbed the narrow stairs to her room, the smallest bedroom in the house, barely larger than a closet, because paying guests needed the good rooms. Her trunk sat open on the bed, half-packed with the careful selection of a life compressed into portable form. 2 dresses besides her morning black. Undergarments. Her mother's Bible and her grandmother's cameo brooch. A daguerreotype of Thomas, forever young, forever smiling the smile of a man who didn't know he had less than 2 years left. Anna picked up the photograph, tracing the line of his jaw with one finger. They'd been happy, she thought. Or at least, they'd been happy enough. Thomas had been kind, patient, understanding when month after month her courses came, and with them the proof of her body's betrayal. He'd never blamed her, never spoke the word Barren, even when the whispers grew loud enough to hear. But he died anyway, and dead men couldn't defend their wives from gossip. Miss Anna? The voice was soft, hesitant. Mary, the boarding house maid, stood in the doorway, her arms full of fresh linens. I heard you're leaving tomorrow. Anna set down the photograph. News travels fast. Mr. Samuel told the guests at dinner. Mary stepped into the room, her young face troubled. She was 17, fresh from a farm family that couldn't afford to keep all their daughters, and she'd always treated Anna with a kindness that felt precious in its rarity. Is it true? About the rancher. It's true. Anna resumed her packing, folding a nightgown with mechanical precision. I'm to be married to a man I've never met, at a ranch I've never seen, because my brother has decided it's what's best. Mary set down the linens and moved closer, lowering her voice. They say he's strange, Miss Anna, Mr. Monroe. They say he came down from the mountains 5 years ago after his family died, and he hasn't spoken more than 10 words to anyone since. They say his ranch is cursed, that nothing grows there, that the land itself is angry. Then he and I should suit each other perfectly. Anna's smile was sharp. 2 cursed souls in a cursed place. Perhaps we'll cancel each other out. I'm serious. Mary's eyes were wide. What if he's cruel? You'll be all alone up there with no one to help if... Then I'll be alone and miserable somewhere else instead of alone and miserable here. Anna closed the trunk with a decisive snap. At least the scenery will be different. But that night, lying in her narrow bed and listening to the boarding house settle around her, Anna felt the first real fingers of fear creep into her heart. She'd been angry, bitter, resigned, but she hadn't been afraid. Not until now. Not until the reality of tomorrow began to take shape in the darkness. She was going to leave everything she knew, everything familiar. She was going to climb into a wagon at dawn and ride 3 days into the wilderness to marry a stranger, a broken man who lived alone in the mountains, who'd lost his family to some unnamed tragedy, who needed a wife the way a dying ranch needed rain. And she had no choice. No money of her own, no prospects, no family who wanted her. Samuel had made that painfully clear. Anna turned her face to the pillow and let herself cry, muffling the sound so the paying guests wouldn't hear. She cried for Thomas, who'd been kind and deserved better than a barren wife. She cried for the children she'd never have, the family she'd never build. She cried for her mother, dead these 10 years, who would have fought Samuel tooth and nail over this exile. And she cried for herself, 24 years old and already finished, sent away like a piece of broken furniture nobody wanted to look at anymore. Now, dawn came cold and gray, with a sky the color of old dishwater. Anna dressed in her traveling clothes, a practical brown wool dress and a heavy cloak, and carried her trunk downstairs herself. Samuel was already up, pacing in the parlor with his pocket watch in hand, his face drawn with the particular tension of a man who wanted an unpleasant task finished. The wagon's here, he said without preamble. Driver's name is Caleb Morrison. He knows the route. He'll get you there safely. Anna nodded. She'd said her goodbyes to Mary the night before, pressed $1 into the girl's hand that she could ill afford to spare, and asked her to pray. For what? She didn't specify. For everything, she supposed. For nothing. It didn't much matter. The wagon waited in the street, a sturdy freight wagon with a canvas cover, pulled by two stolid draft horses who looked as enthusiastic about the journey as Anna felt. Caleb Morrison was a weathered man in his 50s, the kind of frontier veteran whose face had been carved by wind and sun into something resembling old leather. He touched his hat brim when he saw Anna. "Ma'am, got your things loaded already. We'll make Fort Laramie by nightfall if the weather holds, then push on to the Monroe place from there." "Thank you." Anna's voice sounded strange to her own ears, too calm, too level, as if she were discussing a trip to the general store rather than the complete upheaval of her existence. Samuel helped her into the wagon, his hand under her elbow, the gesture so much like their father used to do that it made Anna's throat tight. For a moment she thought he might say something, apologize, reconsider, acknowledge the cruelty of what he was doing, but he only pressed a small leather purse into her hands. $20, he said quietly, for emergencies. Anna looked at the purse, then at her brother. $20, the price of a train ticket back to Cedar Ridge, if she chose to return. Or the price of her pride, acknowledging that even Samuel knew he was throwing her to the wolves. "Goodbye, Samuel." She didn't say thank you. She couldn't. The wagon lurched into motion, and Cedar Ridge began to fall away behind her. Anna didn't look back. She kept her eyes forward on the rutted road that led north, toward the mountains, toward a life she couldn't imagine and a man she'd never met. The first day passed in a blur of rattling wheels and endless prairie. Caleb wasn't much for conversation, which suited Anna fine. She had no desire to explain herself, to hear whatever stories he'd heard about the cursed widow being shipped off to the hermit rancher. Let him think what he wanted. Everyone else did. They stopped for the night at Fort Laramie, a rough collection of buildings clustered around the old military outpost. Caleb arranged for Anna to stay at the fort commander's house, where his wife, a brisk, efficient woman named Mrs. Carter, provided a hot meal and a narrow bed without asking questions Anna didn't want to answer. But at breakfast, Mrs. Carter's curiosity got the better of her charity. "Morrison says you're headed to the Monroe Ranch." She poured coffee with the kind of careful neutrality that meant she'd already formed opinions. "That's quite a ways up into the high country." "So I understand." Anna cut her salt pork into precise pieces, a delaying tactic she'd perfected over 3 years of invasive questions. "Jack Monroe." Mrs. Carter said the name like she was tasting it, testing its weight. "I met him once, must be 6 years ago now. He came through with his wife and little boy on their way to stake a homestead claim. Seemed like a decent man. Quiet, but decent." Anna's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "His wife?" "Sarah, her name was. Pretty little thing, couldn't have been more than 20. The boy was just a baby, maybe a year old." Mrs. Carter's face softened with memory. "They stayed here 3 days while Monroe bought supplies. Sarah was so excited about their new life, kept talking about the garden she'd plant, the house they'd build. She showed me the quilts she'd made, all packed in their wagon." The past tense hung heavy in the air. "What happened to them?" Anna asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Mrs. Carter sighed. "Fever. About 2 years after they settled up there. Word came down that Sarah and the boy had both died within days of each other. Monroe buried them on the ranch and never came down from the mountain again. Some of the trappers see him occasionally, trading pelts, buying minimal supplies, but he doesn't talk. Doesn't visit, just exists up there." Anna set down her fork, her appetite gone. She'd known Jack Monroe was a widower. Samuel had mentioned it in passing, but this was different. This was real. A man who'd watched his wife and child die, who'd buried them with his own hands, and then retreated into isolation so complete that the world below had all but forgotten him, and she was being sent to marry him. "Mrs. Carter," Anna said slowly, "why would a man like that agree to marry someone he's never met?" The older woman's expression was kind, but frank. "Because even hermits need to survive, dear. A ranch that size takes 2 people minimum to run properly. Monroe's pride won't let him hire help, but a wife, that's different. That's respectable. And your brother's offer was generous." There it was, the truth laid bare over breakfast coffee and salt pork. Jack Monroe didn't want a wife. He wanted a ranch hand he didn't have to pay wages to, and Samuel wanted his cursed sister gone. It was a business transaction dressed up in the clothes of matrimony. Anna excused herself and went to ready for the day's journey, her hands shaking as she pinned up her hair. This was her life now. This was her future. A business arrangement with a broken man in a dying ranch, both of them going through the motions of marriage because society required it. The second day on the trail was harder than the first. They left the relative civilization of Fort Laramie behind and pushed into rougher country, rolling hills that gradually gave way to steeper terrain, pine forests that closed in like dark walls on either side of the narrowing road. The temperature dropped as they climbed, and Anna wrapped her cloak tighter, watching her breath mist in the air. Caleb grew more alert, his eyes constantly scanning the tree line. When Anna asked why, he was blunt. Bandits sometimes work this route. Not often, but often enough. Plus there's wolves, bears, and the occasional mountain lion if you're unlucky. He patted the rifle resting beside him on the wagon seat. Probably won't see nothing, but pays to be careful. Anna found herself looking at the trees with new wariness. She'd lived her whole life in Cedar Ridge, where the biggest dangers were winter storms and the occasional bar fight. This was different. This was the true frontier, where civilization's thin veneer stripped away to reveal the raw violence underneath. They made camp that night in a clearing beside a fast-running stream, the water so cold it made Anna's teeth ache when she drank. Caleb built a fire and made a simple dinner of beans and coffee, while Anna tried to find a comfortable position on the hard ground, wrapped in blankets that smelled of horse and old canvas. "We'll reach Monroe's ranch by mid-afternoon tomorrow," Caleb said, stirring the beans. "Might want to prepare yourself. It's not much to look at." "What do you mean?" Caleb hesitated, clearly weighing how much honesty was appropriate. "It's rough, ma'am. The house is sound enough. Monroe built it himself, so it'll last, but it's bare bones. No decorations, no extras, just 4 walls and a roof. And the land—" He shook his head. "It's high country, hard to work, short growing season, rocky soil. Monroe runs some cattle, does some trapping, but it's subsistence living at best." Anna stared into the fire, watching sparks spiral up into the darkness. Why did he choose such a difficult place? I asked him that once, back when he was buying lumber for the house. He said some places are hard to reach on purpose. Said he wanted somewhere the world couldn't follow him to. A place the world couldn't reach. Anna understood that desire more than she wanted to admit. Wasn't that what she'd longed for in Cedar Ridge? Somewhere she could exist without the weight of judgment, without the constant reminder of her failures? Maybe she and Jack Monroe had more in common than a business arrangement. She slept poorly that night, the ground too hard, the night too cold, her thoughts too restless. Tomorrow she would arrive at her new home. Tomorrow she would meet the man she was supposed to marry. Tomorrow her old life would end, and this new, unknowable existence would begin. When dawn broke, Anna was already awake, watching the sky lighten through the trees. The Monroe Ranch appeared through the pines like something from a cautionary tale. Anna's first thought was that it looked angry. The house was a squat log structure with a steep-pitched roof to shed snow, its single window staring out like a baleful eye. The barn was larger, more carefully constructed, as if Monroe cared more for his animals' comfort than his own. A sagging fence enclosed a yard of beaten earth, and beyond that, the land rolled away in waves of gray-green grass dotted with pine and scrub. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, and it was the most isolated place Anna had ever seen. "There he is," Caleb said quietly, nodding toward the barn. A man emerged from the shadows of the barn door, and Anna's breath caught despite herself. Jack Monroe was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of lean, rangy build that came from years of hard physical labor. He wore work-stained canvas pants and a flannel shirt, his dark hair overlong and touched with gray at the temples, even though he couldn't be more than 35. His face was weathered, angular, handsome in a severe way that reminded Anna of the mountain peaks rising in the distance. But it was his eyes that made her hands clench in her lap, gray-blue and utterly empty, like windows into an abandoned house. The wagon rolled to a stop, and Monroe approached with the slow, economical movements of a man who never hurried. He stopped a respectful distance away, his eyes flicking over Anna with all the warmth of a man inspecting purchased livestock. "Miss Whitmore." His voice was deep, rough from disuse. "Mr. Monroe?" Anna's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Caleb?" Monroe nodded to the driver. "You'll stay the night. Storm's coming." It wasn't a question. Caleb glanced at the sky, still clear, though clouds were building to the west, and nodded. "Appreciate it. Let me help you unload." The two men moved to the back of the wagon, leaving Anna perched on the seat, unsure if she should climb down or wait. In the end, she climbed down herself, her legs stiff from 2 days of travel, and stood awkwardly in the yard while Monroe and Caleb hauled her trunk toward the house. The front door opened with a protesting creak, revealing an interior that made Anna's heart sink. Caleb hadn't lied about the bare bones. The main room held an iron stove, a rough-hewn table with 2 mismatched chairs, and a single rocking chair pulled close to the fireplace. No curtains softened the window. No rugs covered the floor. No pictures or decorations suggested human warmth. It was shelter. Nothing more. "Your room." Monroe gestured to a door on the left side of the main room. He set her trunk down just inside the doorway, then stepped back, creating distance. "I'm on the other side. Caleb can take the loft." Anna moved to the doorway of what would be her room and felt something inside her crack. It was barely larger than a closet, space for a narrow bed, a small dresser, nothing more. The bed had a frame but no mattress, just rope webbing that would need a straw tick laid across it. "I'll bring straw for the bed," Monroe said from behind her, his voice carefully neutral. "And blankets. It gets cold at night." She turned to face him, and for a moment they stood there, this stranger who was supposed to be her husband, and this woman who was supposed to be his wife, both of them knowing the truth of what this arrangement really was. "Thank you," Anna managed. Monroe nodded once and left, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. Anna heard him say something to Caleb, then the front door closed and she was alone in this room that was now hers, in this house that was now her home, in this life that was now her reality. She sank onto the bed frame, her hands gripping the rough wood, and tried very hard not to cry. Outside, she could hear Monroe and Caleb talking in low voices. Tools clanged in the barn. A horse whinnied. The wind picked up, rattling the window in its frame, and Anna thought about Mrs. Carter's words. Sarah was so excited about their new life, kept talking about the garden she'd plant, the house they'd build. Sarah had died here. She and her baby had caught fever and died in this harsh, unforgiving place, and Jack Monroe had buried them and locked himself away in grief so profound he'd become a ghost in his own life. And now Anna was supposed to somehow exist alongside that grief, in this house haunted by the family he'd lost. A knock on her doorframe made her look up. Caleb stood there, his weathered face sympathetic. "Brought you some water for washing up. Figure you'd want to freshen up before dinner." He set a basin and pitcher on the floor. "Ma'am, if you want, I can take you back to Fort Laramie tomorrow. Tell your brother this was a mistake. It ain't too late to change your mind." Anna looked at the basin, at the water that trembled slightly from Caleb's shaking hands. He was offering her an out, a chance to run back to Cedar Ridge, to Samuel's boarding house, to the whispers and judgment, but at least to something familiar. "No," she heard herself say. "Thank you, but no. I'll stay." Because what was waiting for her back in Cedar Ridge? More shame, more pity, more years of being the cautionary tale mothers told their daughters. At least here, in this stark and lonely place, she could fail in private. At least here, nobody knew her story well enough to whisper about it. Caleb nodded slowly. "You're tougher than you look, Miss Whitmore. I think you'll need to be." He left her alone, and Anna washed the trail dust from her face and hands with water so cold it stung. She unpacked her trunk with mechanical efficiency, dresses hung on pegs, undergarments folded in the dresser, her mother's Bible placed on the small shelf above the bed. The daguerreotype of Thomas she hesitated over, then tucked into the drawer with her stockings. This was her life now. Thomas belonged to the past. When she emerged, Monroe had built a fire in the stove and was preparing dinner with the efficient movements of a man long accustomed to caring for himself. Caleb sat at the table, and both men looked up when Anna entered. "Sit," Monroe said, nodding to the second chair. "Food's almost ready." Dinner was beans, salt pork, and cornbread that was surprisingly good. Monroe ate in silence, his eyes on his plate, and Caleb filled the quiet with stories from the trail. Nothing deep, just the comfortable patter of a man used to making conversation. Anna was grateful for it. Without Caleb's voice, the silence would have been crushing. After dinner, Monroe spoke for the first time unprompted. "Storm will be here by midnight. Heavy snow. Might last 2-3 days." His eyes met Anna's briefly, then slid away. "We'll do the ceremony when it clears. Preacher comes through once a month. Should be here in a week or so." A week. Anna had a week before she would officially become Mrs. Jack Monroe. A week to prepare herself for this strange half-life of a marriage that wasn't really a marriage at all. "All right," she said quietly. That night, lying on a hastily stuffed straw mattress under wool blankets that smelled of camphor, Anna listened to the wind begin to howl. Monroe had been right about the storm. It hit just after midnight, snow driving against the window in waves, the house creaking under the assault. In the main room, she could hear Monroe moving around, feeding the fire, checking the door. He never slept, she realized. Or if he did, it wasn't for long. The storm lasted 3 days, just as Monroe had predicted. 3 days of being trapped in the small house with 2 men who barely spoke. Monroe because he seemed to have forgotten how. Caleb because even his trail stories eventually ran out. Anna occupied herself with cleaning, which the house desperately needed. She scrubbed the floor, washed the windows, organized the meager kitchen supplies. Monroe watched her work with an expression she couldn't read, but he didn't stop her. On the second day, she found a crate in the corner of Monroe's room, and curiosity got the better of her. Inside were quilts, beautiful, intricate quilts in patterns Anna recognized from the books her mother had kept. Sarah's quilts, she realized. The ones Mrs. Carter had mentioned. Monroe had kept them, packed away where he wouldn't have to see them but couldn't bring himself to throw away. Anna carefully refolded them and closed the crate, her throat tight. This man had loved his wife, loved her enough to preserve her work, to hold on to the physical remnants of her presence, even though every stitch must have been agony to look at. What was Anna supposed to be to him, in the shadow of that love? The storm broke on the 4th morning, and Caleb prepared to leave as soon as the road was passable. Monroe paid him. Anna saw money change hands, and Caleb pulled her aside before he climbed into his wagon. "You have that $20 your brother gave you?" he asked quietly. Anna nodded. "Keep it safe. And if you ever need to leave, you send word to Fort Laramie. I'll come get you. No questions asked. You understand?" "I understand." Anna felt tears prick her eyes at this kindness from a near stranger. "Thank you, Caleb." He touched his hat brim and climbed into the wagon, and Anna watched him roll away down the snowy track until he disappeared into the trees. When she turned back to the house, Monroe was standing in the doorway, watching her. "You could have gone with him," he said. "I know." "Why didn't you?" Anna met his empty eyes and told him the truth. "Because I have nowhere else to go." Something flickered in Monroe's expression, recognition, maybe, or understanding. He nodded once and went back inside, leaving Anna standing in the snow. What? The days developed a rhythm, harsh and unforgiving as the land itself. Anna woke before dawn to feed the stove and start coffee. Monroe was already up, already working, tending the cattle, checking the barn, chopping wood. They ate breakfast in silence. Then Monroe would go out to whatever task the day demanded, and Anna would tackle the endless work of trying to make the house livable. She scrubbed and scoured and organized. She used some of her $20 to buy fabric at the trading post 10 miles down the mountain. Monroe took her there in stony silence and made curtains for the window, a tablecloth for the rough table. Small touches of civilization that felt absurd in this stark place but gave her something to do with her hands. Monroe watched these transformations without comment. The curtains appeared and he said nothing. The tablecloth covered the scarred wood, and his only reaction was to carefully move his coffee cup to avoid spilling on the clean fabric. But he didn't tell her to stop. The preacher came on a Tuesday, a cheerful circuit rider named Reverend Walsh, who seemed determined to find joy in even this grim ceremony. He performed the marriage in the main room with 2 trappers Monroe knew as witnesses. Anna wore her least worn dress and pinned her hair up carefully. Monroe wore the same work clothes he always wore, his expression carved from stone. Do you, Jack Monroe, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Anna Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Anna looked at the man beside her, this stranger she'd known for barely 2 weeks, this broken soul who'd buried his family and locked himself away from the world. She thought about Cedar Ridge and Samuel's boarding house and the whispers that had driven her here. She thought about Sarah's quilts and the empty look in Monroe's eyes and the harsh beauty of the land outside. I do, she said. Reverend Walsh pronounced them man and wife, and that was that. Anna Whitmore became Anna Monroe in the time it took to say 2 words, and nothing changed at all. The trappers stayed for dinner. Monroe actually cooked, producing a venison stew that was surprisingly good, and then they left, and it was just Anna and Monroe again, now legally bound but no different than they'd been that morning. That night, Monroe cleared his throat awkwardly. You can keep your room, he said. This doesn't have to be… I understand, Anna said quietly, saving him from the explanation. Thank you. He nodded, relief evident on his face, and retreated to his room. Anna lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, now legally Mrs. Jack Monroe, but in practice still very much alone. The weeks blurred together. November gave way to December, and the snow piled higher. Monroe taught Anna how to care for the cattle, how to recognize signs of distress in the animals, how to repair fence despite the cold. She learned quickly, driven by pride and the need to prove she wasn't completely useless. And slowly, impossibly, things began to shift. It started small. Monroe coming in from the barn to find coffee already made, Anna having learned how he liked it, strong enough to strip paint, no sugar. Anna mending a tear in his work shirt without being asked, using thread she'd bought with her dwindling savings. Monroe bringing in extra wood for her room's small stove without comment. They didn't talk much, but they started to exist together with less awkwardness, less painful silence. One evening in mid-December, Anna made cornbread with honey butter, remembering how Monroe had eaten 3 pieces of Reverend Walsh's wife's cornbread at their wedding dinner. When she set the pan on the table, Monroe looked at it, then at her, and something almost resembling a smile ghosted across his face. "Smells good," he said. 2 words, but they felt like a gift. "My mother's recipe," Anna replied, cutting him a generous slice. She always said the secret was buttermilk and a hot oven. Monroe ate in silence, but he took 2 more pieces, and when Anna cleared the table, he said, "That was real good. Thank you." Anna felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Not love, nothing so dramatic, but something. Connection, maybe. The recognition that she'd done something that pleased him, that made this harsh life fractionally more bearable. Christmas came and went with minimal fanfare. Anna made a special dinner, and Monroe produced a small ham from the smokehouse she hadn't known existed. They ate together, and afterward Monroe pulled out a fiddle Anna had never seen him play. "Used to play for Sarah," he said, running his fingers over the strings. "Ain't touched it since she died." Anna held her breath, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever fragile moment this was. Monroe drew the bow across the strings, and music filled the small house, sad, haunting music that spoke of loss and loneliness and the weight of memory. Anna listened with tears streaming down her face, crying for Sarah and her baby, for Thomas, for her own lost dreams, for this broken man pouring his grief into melody. When the last note faded, Monroe set the fiddle aside carefully. "She loved that song," he said quietly. "It was her favorite." "It's beautiful," Anna whispered. Monroe looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw past the emptiness to the pain underneath. "You remind me of her sometimes, the way you move, the way you hum when you're working. Not the same, but…" He trailed off, shaking his head. "I thought I couldn't bear it, having someone here again. But you make it less hard." Anna's breath caught. It wasn't a declaration of love, it wasn't even friendship, really, but it was acknowledgement, recognition, the beginning of something. "You make it less hard for me too," she said honestly. "This life is brutal, but you've taught me how to survive it." They sat in comfortable silence after that, and when Anna finally rose to bank the fire for the night, Monroe spoke once more. "Good night, Anna." Not Mrs. Monroe. "Anna, Good night, Jack. January brought storms that made the earlier snow look like a dusting. They were trapped in the house for days at a time, and Anna discovered that prolonged isolation with Jack Monroe was less terrible than she'd feared. He taught her to play poker, badly, and she read to him from her mother's Bible, the familiar verses a comfort in the howling wilderness. They still slept in separate rooms. They still barely touched, but they were becoming partners in the way that two people thrown together by necessity sometimes do. They learned each other's rhythms, anticipated each other's needs, found a way to coexist that didn't hurt. And then, on a clear night in late January, when the stars looked close enough to touch, everything changed. Anna was banking the fire when she heard horses outside. Unusual this late. Unusual in this weather. Monroe was at the door before she could move, his rifle in hand, his body tense. "Stay inside," he ordered, and slipped out into the night. Anna pressed against the window, her heart pounding. Through the frost-etched glass, she could see 3 horses, no, 4, and figures moving in the darkness. Monroe's voice, sharp with command. Another voice, higher, desperate. Then Monroe was pushing through the door, and Anna's world tilted. He was carrying a woman. She was young, couldn't be more than 20, and she was barely conscious, her dress soaked with blood and melting snow. Behind Monroe came 2 men, rough-looking trappers, and one of them carried a bundle wrapped in blankets. A baby. Anna realized with shock. The bundle was a baby. "Clear the table," Monroe barked, and Anna scrambled to obey, sweeping their dinner dishes aside as Monroe laid the woman down. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow, and when Anna pulled back her cloak, she saw the source of the blood, a wound in her side, deep and angry. "What happened?" Anna demanded, grabbing clean cloths from her room. "Bandits," one of the trappers said. His name was Pete, Anna remembered, one of Monroe's occasional trading partners. "Hit them on the road to Fort Laramie. Killed her husband, took everything. We found them in a ravine, half frozen. Brought them here. It was closest." The woman's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Anna with desperate intensity. "My baby," she whispered. "Where's my baby?" "Right here." The second trapper, Anna didn't know his name, held out the bundle. "She's breathing. She's okay." But the woman's face crumpled. "No," she breathed. "Please, no. Not my baby. Not—" A cough racked her body, and more blood stained the table. "Promise me," she gasped, her hand shooting out to grab Anna's wrist with surprising strength. "Promise you'll keep her safe. Promise you'll—" Her eyes rolled back, and her grip went slack. "No!" Anna pressed her fingers to the woman's throat, searching for a pulse. It was there, but weak, thready, fading. "Jack, we need to—" "There's nothing we can do." Monroe's voice was flat, empty. "She's dying. That wound. She's been bleeding for hours. It's a miracle she lasted this long." "We have to try." Anna looked around wildly. "We need a doctor. We need—" "The nearest doctor is 3 days away in good weather. She doesn't have 3 hours." Monroe's eyes met hers, and Anna saw the truth there. He'd watched his wife die. He knew death when he saw it. The woman's breathing changed, becoming labored, wet. Anna held her hand, murmuring comfort she knew couldn't be heard, and watched a stranger die on her kitchen table. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of struggling breaths and weakening pulse, and then stillness. Anna stood there, her hand still clutching the dead woman's, and felt something inside her break and reform simultaneously. She'd been sent here to be cursed, barren, useless. But this woman, this dying stranger, had looked at her and seen hope, had trusted her with the most precious thing in the world. "The baby," she said, turning to the trapper. "Let me see the baby." He handed over the bundle, and Anna peeled back the blankets with trembling hands. A tiny face looked up at her, red and wrinkled and perfect. A girl, maybe 3 months old, with dark hair and eyes that would probably be brown when she grew into them. She was quiet, too quiet, her little chest barely moving. "She's cold," Anna said urgently. "Jack, she's too cold. Help me." And that's how they ended up in front of the fire at midnight, Anna holding a stranger's baby against her chest, trying to warm her back to life, while 2 trappers watched, and Jack Monroe stood frozen by the table where another dead woman lay. The baby's skin was blue-tinged, her breathing shallow. Anna stripped off her own shawl and wrapped it around the infant, rubbing her tiny limbs, breathing warm air on her face. "Come on," she thought desperately. "Come on, little one. You survived bandits and cold and your mother dying. You can survive this too." But the baby's breaths kept getting shallower, and Anna felt panic rising in her throat. "Not this. Please, not this. Not after everything." "Jack!" Her voice broke. "Jack, she's not breathing right. What do I do?" Monroe finally moved, kneeling beside Anna's chair. He looked at the baby with eyes full of old pain, and Anna saw him traveling back in time to another baby who'd stopped breathing, another helpless vigil. "Tip her head back a little," he said quietly. "Clear her airway. Sometimes they just need help remembering how." Anna did as he said, and the baby made a small choking sound, then suddenly gasped. A real breath, deep and shocked. Another breath. Another. And then she started to cry. A thin, reedy wail that was the most beautiful sound Anna had ever heard. "There you go," Anna whispered, tears streaming down her face. "There you go, sweetheart. That's it. Breathe." The baby cried for 10 minutes straight, and Anna held her through all of it, crying herself, while Jack Monroe sat back on his heels and put his face in his hands. They buried the woman the next morning in the small cemetery behind the barn, next to Sarah and her son. 4 graves now in the frozen ground, marking the lives lost to this harsh land. Pete and his partner left after the burial, heading back to their trap lines, their expressions grim. And Anna and Jack were left with a baby neither of them had expected, both of them shattered by the night's events. The baby, Anna had started calling her Hope, because what else could she be, required constant attention. She needed feeding, changing, warming, comforting. Anna had no experience with babies, but desperation and instinct guided her. She made a sugar water solution when the baby refused the cow's milk, walked her for hours when she cried, slept in the rocking chair with Hope against her chest because putting her down seemed impossible. Jack helped in ways Anna hadn't expected. He fashioned a cradle from wood scraps, built it in 2 days of furious activity. He took night watches when Anna was too exhausted to stay awake, walking Hope around the room, singing her the same sad songs he'd played on his fiddle at Christmas. And slowly, Hope began to thrive. She started taking the milk. Her color improved. She gained weight, filled out, began to look less like a fragile doll and more like a living baby. Anna felt something awakening in her that she'd thought long dead, maternal instinct, fierce and protective. This baby wasn't hers by blood, but she'd been entrusted to Anna's care by a dying woman's last wish. That made her Anna's in every way that mattered. One evening, a month after Hope's arrival, Anna looked up from feeding the baby to find Jack watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "You're good with her," he said quietly. "You're a natural mother." Anna felt those words lance through her like lightning. A natural mother. Her. The barren widow, the cursed woman, the failure. "I don't know about that. I'm just doing my best." "That's all any parent does." Jack moved closer, reaching out to touch Hope's tiny hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around his thumb, and something softened in his face. "Sarah would have liked you. She would have been glad that someone like you found her." "Found who?" Anna asked, confused. Jack's eyes met hers. "Hope. I know she's not Sarah's baby, but sometimes I think maybe Sarah sent her to us. Maybe this was meant to happen." Anna's throat tightened. "Do you really believe that?" "I don't know what I believe anymore." Jack's thumb stroked Hope's little hand. "But I know that for the first time in 5 years, this house feels alive again. And that's because of you, both of you." They sat there in the firelight, the 3 of them, and Anna felt the walls she'd built around her heart beginning to crumble. This wasn't the life she'd imagined. This wasn't the family she'd thought she'd have, but it was real. It was hers. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough. February arrived with more snow, and Anna's 20th dollar finally ran out. She'd spent it all on Hope, fabric for diapers, sugar for the feeding solution, medicine when the baby caught a cold. She was officially penniless now, completely dependent on Jack for survival. But somehow, that didn't scare her anymore. She'd proven herself here. She could work the ranch, care for a baby, survive the brutal isolation. She'd carved out a place for herself in this harsh land, made a home from a house that had been a tomb. And Jack had become something more than a business arrangement. Not a husband, not in the traditional sense, but a partner. Someone she trusted. Someone who trusted her. One night, as they sat by the fire with Hope sleeping in her cradle between them, Jack spoke into the comfortable silence. "I never thought I'd have this again," he said quietly. "A family. Any kind of family. I thought I was done." Anna looked at him, this man who'd lost everything and somehow found the strength to open his heart one more time. "Are you glad you were wrong?" Jack's eyes found hers across the firelight, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something besides emptiness there. Something warm and alive and real. "Yeah," he said. "I'm glad." Anna smiled, and in that moment she understood something fundamental about her journey. She'd been sent here as a joke, an exile, a burden to be rid of. But somewhere along the way, in the harsh land and the brutal cold and the desperate fight to save one small life, she'd found exactly what everyone said she'd never have. She'd found a family, not the one she'd expected, not the one society would recognize or approve of, but a family nonetheless, built from broken pieces and desperate wishes and the fierce determination to survive. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, and snow fell in the darkness. But inside, the fire burned warm, and Hope slept peacefully, and Anna Monroe sat beside her husband in name but partner in truth, and felt something very much like happiness. The joke, she thought, was on everyone who'd sent her here to fail. Because against all odds, in the most unlikely place, she'd finally, truly, come home. Spring came late to the high country, announced not by warmth, but by the sound of water, ice melting off the roof, the creek swelling with snowmelt, the constant drip and trickle that marked winter's reluctant retreat. Anna stood at the window in early March, Hope balanced on her hip, watching Jack repair the fence line that had buckled under the weight of snow. The baby was 4 months old now, plump and healthy, her dark eyes tracking everything with intense curiosity. "Your papa's working hard out there," Anna murmured, then froze at her own words. Papa. When had she started thinking of Jack that way? When had this arrangement of convenience transformed into something that felt dangerously close to real? Hope made a gurgling sound and reached for the window, her small hand leaving prints on the glass Anna had cleaned just that morning. Anna smiled despite herself. Before Hope, she would have minded the mess. Now she welcomed these small signs of life, these proofs that someone besides 2 damaged adults occupied this space. The door opened, bringing with it a gust of cold air, and Jack himself, his face reddened from the wind. He stamped snow from his boots and hung his coat on the peg, his movements economical as always. But when he turned and saw Anna and Hope by the window, something in his expression softened. "How is she?" he asked, moving closer. "Restless. I think she's bored with being inside all winter." Anna shifted Hope to her other hip. "Aren't you, sweet girl?" Hope kicked her legs in response, and Jack reached out to take her, his large hands gentle as he lifted the baby against his chest. Anna had watched this transformation with quiet wonder. The way this man who'd locked himself away from the world had opened up for a child who wasn't even his. The way he talked to Hope in a soft voice Anna never heard him use otherwise. Told her stories about the mountains and the animals, sang her those sad songs that didn't seem quite so sad anymore. "Fence is done," Jack said, bouncing Hope gently. "But we're going to need supplies soon. Coffee's almost gone, and we're low on flour, sugar, lamp oil." He paused, his eyes meeting Anna's. "I was thinking maybe we could all go down to the trading post together, give Hope a chance to see something besides these 4 walls." Anna's heart did something complicated in her chest. A family outing. That's what he was suggesting. Not Jack going alone while Anna stayed behind with the baby, the way it had been all winter. All 3 of them, together, like a real family, might do. "I'd like that," she said quietly. They made the trip 2 days later, the wagon rolling down the mountain road that was more mud than ice now. Hope bundled in blankets between them. It was Anna's first time leaving the ranch since she'd arrived 6 months ago, and she found herself drinking in the scenery with new eyes. The way the pines marched down the mountainside. The glimpses of valleys opening up below them. the sky so blue it hurt to look at. The trading post was a rough log building that served as general store, post office, and social hub for the scattered population of trappers, ranchers, and prospectors who worked the high country. When Jack helped Anna down from the wagon, she saw curtains twitch in the windows of the small cabin beside the store. Word of their arrival would spread fast in a place this isolated. Inside, the store was dim and crowded, smelling of tobacco, leather, and coffee. The proprietor, a wiry man named Silas Harper, looked up from his ledger and did a visible double take. "Monroe, that you?" His gaze shifted to Anna and Hope, and his eyebrows climbed. "Well, I'll be damned. Heard you'd gotten married, but seeing is believing." "Need supplies," Jack said, his voice flat in the way Anna recognized as his public face, the walls going up, the world being shut out. "List is here." He handed over a piece of paper and Silas studied it, glancing periodically at Anna with undisguised curiosity. "This'll take a few minutes to gather. You folks want coffee while you wait? Mrs. Harper just made a fresh pot." Before Jack could refuse, Anna could see the refusal forming on his lips. She spoke up. "That would be lovely. Thank you." Silas's wife, Martha, appeared from the back room, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a round woman with kind eyes and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades on the frontier. When she saw Hope, her whole face lit up. "Oh my stars, is that a baby? We haven't had a baby up here in near about 3 years." She moved closer, her hands clasped together. "May I?" Anna found herself handing Hope over, watching as Martha cooed and fussed over the infant with the hunger of a woman starved for female company and small children. Hope, for her part, seemed delighted by the attention, gurgling and waving her fists. "How old is she?" Martha asked, expertly supporting Hope's head. "About 4 months," Anna replied. "Her name is Hope." "Hope Monroe." Martha tested the name, smiling. "That's real pretty. And she's healthy, growing well?" "She's perfect," Anna said, and realized she meant it with her whole heart. Martha's eyes sharpened, moving between Anna and Jack with an assessing look that made Anna suddenly aware of how they must appear, Jack standing stiff and uncomfortable, Anna hovering near the baby, the space between them careful and measured, not like newlyweds, not like a couple in love, like two people playing at family and not quite pulling it off. "Well, she's beautiful," Martha said finally, handing Hope back to Anna. "You must be so proud, both of you." Jack nodded once, his face unreadable, and retreated to help Silas gather supplies. Anna was left with Martha and coffee that was too strong, fielding questions that felt like gentle interrogation wrapped in frontier hospitality. "How are you settling in up at the ranch? Must be quite a change from town life." "It's been an adjustment," Anna admitted, "but I'm learning." "And Monroe? He treating you well? I know he's had a hard time of it, after Sarah and the boy." "Sometimes grief makes a man hard." Anna chose her words carefully. "He's been kind, fair. He's teaching me to help with the ranch work." Martha's expression suggested she heard all the words Anna wasn't saying. "That's good. That's real good. You need anything at all, you send word, you hear? Women up here, we gotta look out for each other." It was the first time since leaving Cedar Ridge that Anna felt the touch of female solidarity, and it made her throat tight. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They loaded the supplies and started the journey back as afternoon shadows grew long. Hope fell asleep to the rhythm of the wagon, and Anna found herself studying Jack's profile as he drove, this man who was her husband-in-law, but not in fact, her partner, but not her lover, her friend, but not quite. "Martha seems nice," she ventured. "She's good people," Jack allowed, helped Sarah when the boy was born, sat with her at the end. There it was, Sarah, always present even in absence. Anna had learned not to resent the ghost of Jack's first wife. How could she, when Sarah had done nothing wrong except die too young? But sometimes, in moments like this, Anna wondered if there would ever be room for her in Jack's heart, or if Sarah would always occupy all the available space. "Jack," she said slowly, "can I ask you something?" His hands tightened on the reins, but he nodded. "Go ahead." "Do you ever regret it, agreeing to this arrangement?" He was quiet for so long Anna thought he might not answer. The wagon creaked along, and somewhere in the forest, a bird called out, sharp and clear. Finally, Jack spoke. At first, yeah. I regretted it every day. Thought I was betraying Sarah's memory, letting someone else into the house we built, into the life we were supposed to have. He paused, his jaw working. But then, you came, and you weren't what I expected. You weren't trying to replace her. You were just trying to survive. Same as me. Anna's breath caught. And now? Jack glanced at her, and in his eyes she saw something raw and unguarded. Now I wake up and hear you humming in the kitchen, and it doesn't hurt anymore. I watch you with hope, and I think maybe this is what living is supposed to feel like. Not just surviving, actually living. Jack, I know this isn't what you wanted, he continued, the words coming faster now, like a dam breaking. I know your brother paid me to take you, and I know everyone back in your town thinks this is some kind of joke. But Anna, you've made this place a home again. You've brought life back to somewhere I thought was dead, and He stopped, shaking his head. I don't know what that means. I don't know what we are, but I know I'm glad you're here. Anna felt tears slip down her cheeks, hot against her cold skin. I'm glad too, she whispered. I didn't expect to be. I thought I'd hate every minute, but you've given me something I thought I'd never have. Purpose. A place to belong. And hope. Her voice broke. Hope is the greatest gift I've ever received. They didn't touch. They didn't embrace. But something shifted between them in that wagon on the mountain road. Some understanding reached that didn't need physical expression. They were partners, truly now. Whatever this relationship was or wasn't, it was real. It mattered. When they reached the ranch, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jack helped Anna down, his hand lingering on her waist a moment longer than necessary, and their eyes met in the fading light. Tomorrow I'll start planting, he said. Thought maybe you'd want to help. Plan out a garden like you've been talking about. Anna smiled, remembering the sketches she'd made during the long winter. Rows of vegetables, herbs, maybe even some flowers if she could coax them to grow in this harsh soil. I'd like that very much. That night, after Hope was asleep and the fire banked, Anna lay in her narrow bed and listened to Jack moving around in his room. They still slept separately. They still maintained that careful distance. But something had changed. A door had opened, just a crack, and Anna could see possibility on the other side. The next weeks brought the hard work of spring, turning soil that was more rock than earth, building raised beds, hauling water, planting seeds that might or might not survive the short growing season. Anna worked beside Jack dawn to dusk, Hope strapped to her back in a sling Anna had fashioned from an old blanket, and felt her body grow strong in ways it never had in Cedar Ridge. She learned to read the sky for weather, to judge the soil by touch, to coax reluctant vegetables from unwilling ground. Jack taught her with patience she hadn't known he possessed, showing her how to set fence posts and repair harness, and 100 other skills that transformed her from town-bred widow to something harder, more capable. And in the evenings, they fell into a routine that felt dangerously domestic. Jack would play his fiddle while Anna mended clothes or worked on a quilt she was piecing together from scraps. Hope would lie on a blanket between them, gurgling and reaching for the firelight, and sometimes Anna would catch Jack watching them with an expression that made her heart ache. One evening in late April, as Anna nursed Hope and Jack carved a wooden toy by lamplight, he spoke without looking up from his work. I got a letter today, at the trading post. Anna's hand stilled. Jack never got letters. From who? Your brother, Samuel. Jack's knife moved in smooth strokes, shaving curls of wood onto the floor. Wants to know how you're faring. Says your sister-in-law had her baby, a boy. Says they named him after your father. Anna felt a complicated twist of emotions. Samuel had a son. The family line would continue through him, as everyone had always known it would. Did he ask about Hope? Yeah, I wrote back. Told him you'd taken in an orphan. Told him you were doing well. Jack paused, meeting her eyes. Told him you were happy. Am I? Anna asked softly. Happy? Jack set down his carving. I don't know. Are you? Anna looked around the small house, at the curtains she'd made, the clean floor she'd scrubbed, the cradle Jack had built, the life they'd constructed from nothing. "I'm not unhappy," she said carefully. "I think maybe that's the most I ever hoped for." "You deserve more than just not unhappy," Jack said, and there was something fierce in his voice. "You deserve joy, laughter, all the things this life hasn't given you." "And what about you?" Anna countered. "What do you deserve?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. "I deserve whatever I can get," he said finally. "After Sarah and the boy died, I didn't think I deserved anything. Thought maybe their deaths were punishment for something. But then you came, and Hope came, and I started thinking maybe I get another chance. Maybe we both do." Hope chose that moment to finish nursing and let out a satisfied burp, breaking the tension. Anna laughed, adjusting the baby against her shoulder, and Jack smiled, a real smile, not the ghost of one, but something genuine and warm. "She's got timing," he observed. "She's perfect," Anna corrected, pressing a kiss to Hope's downy head. "Absolutely perfect." That night, Anna dreamed of Cedar Ridge for the first time in months. In the dream, she walked down Main Street carrying Hope, and everyone stared. Mrs. Henderson from the millinery, the church ladies, Samuel with his new son. They all looked at her with judgment, with pity, with that particular cruelty that came from believing they knew her story. But Dream Anna just smiled and kept walking, because she had something they didn't understand. She had survived. She had built a life from ashes. She had found purpose in a place they'd sent her to fail. She woke with dawn light streaming through her window and Hope fussing in the cradle. As she lifted the baby and began the morning routine, changing, feeding, humming the songs that had become their private language, Anna realized the dream hadn't left her sad or angry. It had left her grateful. Grateful to be here, in this hard place, with this complicated man raising this miracle child. Grateful that their cruelty had accidentally given her exactly what she needed, even if it wasn't what she'd wanted. May brought warmth finally, real warmth that made the snow retreat up the mountain and turned the meadows green. The garden began to sprout, tiny green shoots that made Anna's heart soar every morning when she checked them. Jack's cattle fattened on good grazing. Hope grew stronger, started trying to roll over, her personality emerging in squeals of delight and the way she grabbed at everything within reach. And Anna and Jack continued their careful dance, partners in work and parenting, bound by respect and growing affection, but still maintaining that last barrier between them. Until the night, everything changed. It started with a sound, horses approaching fast, too fast for friendly visitors. Jack was on his feet before Anna could set down her sewing, his rifle in hand, his face gone hard. "Take Hope to your room," he ordered. "Bar the door. Don't come out until I say." Anna's blood went cold. "Jack, now, Anna." She grabbed Hope and ran for her room, her heart hammering. Through the thin walls, she heard the horses stop, heard voices. Male, aggressive, slurred with drink. She pressed her back against the door, Hope clutched to her chest, and prayed silently. "Monroe!" One of the voices outside was familiar. Pete, the trapper who'd brought the dying woman in February. But he sounded different now, mean and dangerous. "We know you're in there. Come out and talk." But Jack's voice was steady, cold. "You're drunk, Pete. Sleep it off and come back tomorrow." "We ain't drunk. We come for what's ours. You got nothing here that's yours. Now leave before someone gets hurt." "That baby!" Pete shouted. "The one we brought you. She's worth money, Monroe. There's a bounty for her. Her daddy's family wants her back." Anna's world tilted. A bounty. Hope's father had family who wanted her, which meant Anna might lose her, might have this child ripped away just when she'd learned to love without fear. "There's no baby here," Jack said flatly. "The woman you brought died. The baby died too. I buried them both." A lie. Jack was lying to protect Hope, protect Anna, and Anna felt something crack open in her chest. The last wall, the last defense, the last bit of caution that had kept her from falling completely. "You're lying," Pete's voice rose. "We know she lived. Silas Harper told us he's seen a baby at the trading post. You hand her over and we'll split the bounty with you. $500, Monroe. That's more than your ranch is worth." $500. Anna clutched Hope tighter, the baby starting to fuss, sensing her mother's fear. $500 would tempt most men. Would tempt a man who'd only agreed to this marriage for $200 and 3 heifers. But Jack's voice, when it came, was like iron. I told you there's no baby. You're trespassing. You got 5 seconds to get off my land before I start shooting. You can't take us all, old man. Another voice now, younger, cocky. There's 4 of us and 1 of you. Then I guess I better make my shots count. 5. 4. Anna heard scrambling, cursing, the sound of hammers being pulled back on guns. She looked down at Hope, at this child who'd become her whole world, and made a decision. She flung open her door and strode into the main room, Hope on her hip, her head high. Stop! Jack spun, his face going white. Anna, what are you— I'm not hiding while you get shot defending us. She turned to face the door, her voice ringing clear. You want this baby? You want $500? Then you go through both of us. You explain to whoever's paying that bounty how you murdered a woman and child to get what you wanted. See how that sits with your conscience. Through the window, she could see Pete and 3 other men, all rough types, all armed. But Pete's face had gone uncertain. We ain't murderers, ma'am. You just what? Thought you'd terrorize a family in the middle of the night for money? Anna's voice was withering. This child's mother died in our arms. Her last words were asking us to keep her baby safe. And we will. Whatever it takes. Anna, Jack's voice was low, warning. Get back in your room. No. Anna moved to stand beside him. Hope clutched tight. We're in this together, all 3 of us. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Pete lowered his gun, his face twisted with shame and something else. Maybe respect. Maybe just the realization that some lines couldn't be crossed. Come on, he muttered to his companions. This ain't worth it. Pete, one of them started. I said, come on. Pete turned his horse, and slowly, reluctantly, the others followed. Sorry, Monroe. Sorry, ma'am. We just thought Hell, we ain't thinking straight. Too much whiskey and too much winter. They rode away into the darkness, and Anna's legs went weak. She would have fallen if Jack hadn't dropped his rifle and caught her, his arms coming around her and Hope both, holding them like he'd never let go. You damn fool woman, he breathed against her hair. You could have been killed. So could you. Anna pulled back enough to see his face, and what she saw there made her breath stop. Fear, yes. Anger, yes. But also something else. Something that looked like the way she felt. Like love, like terror, like the desperate need to protect what had become precious. I meant what I said, Anna whispered. We're in this together. I'm not losing hope. And I'm not losing you. Anna, I love you. The words tumbled out before she could stop them, born of fear and adrenaline and months of watching this man slowly come back to life. I know this wasn't supposed to be real. I know we're just a business arrangement. But I love you, Jack Monroe. And I love this life we've built. And I will fight anyone who tries to take it away. Jack stared at her, his gray-blue eyes wide with shock. Then, slowly, he smiled. The kind of smile that transformed his whole face, made him look years younger, made him look like a man who'd just been given something he'd thought lost forever. It stopped being a business arrangement a long time ago, he said roughly. I just didn't have the courage to say it. I love you too, Anna. You and Hope both. You're my family. My real family. He kissed her then, right there in the main room with Hope between them, and it was nothing like the chaste peck he'd given her on their wedding day. This was real, deep, full of all the emotion they'd been holding back for months. Anna kissed him back with everything she had, pouring 6 months of careful distance into this one moment of connection. Hope squawked in protest at being squished, and they broke apart, laughing, crying, holding each other in the lamplight. I need to move your things to my room, Jack said when he could speak. Tonight, right now. I can't spend another night with a wall between us. Yes, Anna breathed. Yes. They moved her few possessions together, working in charged silence, transforming Jack's stark room into a space for 2. When everything was settled, they stood in the doorway, looking at the bed that would now be theirs. Not his, not hers, but theirs. Are you sure? Jack asked, giving her one last chance to retreat. Anna looked at this man who'd protected her, who'd helped her raise a child, who'd lied to dangerous men to keep them safe. This man who'd taught her to survive, and then taught her to live. This man who'd somehow, impossibly, become her home. "I've never been more sure of anything," she said. That night, Anna slept in Jack's arms for the first time, hope in her cradle beside the bed, and felt a peace she'd never known. This family they'd built from broken pieces was real now, acknowledged, defended, chosen. In the morning, she woke to find Jack already up, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. "That I'm the luckiest man alive," he said simply. "That I was dead for 5 years, and you brought me back to life. That I never expected to feel this way again, and it's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't deserve it, but I'm keeping it anyway." Anna reached up to touch his face, tracing the lines that grief and hard living had carved there. "We both deserve it. We both deserve happiness after everything we've lost." "Then let's choose it," Jack said, covering her hand with his. "Every day. Let's choose this. Choose us." "Always," Anna promised, and meant it with her whole heart. Outside, spring continued its slow conquest of the mountains, and inside the small ranch house, a family that had been born from exile and arrangement and desperate circumstance transformed into something real, something chosen, something that would weather whatever storms came next. Together. The days that followed their confession felt different, charged with a new energy that transformed even the most mundane tasks into something precious. Anna would catch Jack watching her as she hung laundry, and the heat in his gaze made her fingers fumble with the clothespins. He would brush past her in the narrow kitchen, his hand finding the small of her back, and the casual intimacy of it still made her breath catch. They were learning each other in a new way now, without the careful distance they'd maintained for so long. Hope seemed to sense the change too. At 6 months old, she was becoming more alert, more responsive, and she would squeal with delight when Jack tossed her gently in the air, or when Anna sang to her while preparing dinner. The house rang with laughter now, with the sounds of a family truly living rather than merely surviving. But the encounter with Pete had left its mark. Jack became more vigilant, keeping his rifle closer, watching the tree line with sharper eyes. And Anna found herself holding Hope tighter, fear coiling in her stomach whenever she heard unexpected sounds. "We should send word to Fort Laramie," Jack said one morning over breakfast. "Find out if there really is a bounty. Find out who's looking for Hope." Anna's hands stilled on her coffee cup. "And if there is? If her father's family wants her back?" "Then we deal with it." Jack's jaw was set, stubborn. "But I want to know what we're facing. Surprises in the dark are how people get killed." So they made the trip to Fort Laramie, the three of them together, and while Jack traded pelts and bought supplies, Anna sought out Mrs. Carter. The older woman welcomed her with genuine warmth, exclaiming over how much Hope had grown, but when Anna explained why they'd come, her expression turned grave. "There's been talk," Mrs. Carter admitted, pouring tea in her neat parlor. "A man came through about 3 weeks ago, well-dressed, Eastern type. Said he was looking for his brother's child. Said his brother and sister-in-law had been killed by bandits and the baby stolen. Offered a reward for information." Anna's blood ran cold. "Did he give a name? Describe the baby?" "Called himself Henry Blackwood. Said the baby would be about 4 or 5 months old. A girl, dark hair. Said she was his brother Robert's only child, and he meant to raise her properly back east, give her the life her parents would have wanted." Robert Blackwood. Anna turned the name over in her mind, trying to match it to the dying woman who'd pressed Hope into her arms. Had that been her name? Mrs. Blackwood? Anna realized with a pang that she'd never asked, had never thought to find out who the woman was beyond a desperate mother making a final plea. "What did you tell him?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Carter's eyes were kind but troubled. "I told him the truth, that I'd heard Jack Monroe had taken in an orphan after a woman died at his ranch, but I couldn't say for certain if it was the child he was looking for. He gave me his card, asked me to send word if I learned anything." She pulled a cream-colored card from her apron pocket and handed it to Anna. "He's staying at the Continental Hotel in Cheyenne. Said he'd wait there until he had news." Anna stared at the card, at the elegant script that proclaimed Henry Blackwood, Esquire, Attorney at Law, Boston, Massachusetts. An attorney. A man of means and education. A man who could give Hope everything Anna and Jack couldn't. Fine schools, society, a future beyond this harsh mountain life. "What are you going to do?" Mrs. Carter asked gently. I don't know, Anna whispered. She's not mine. I know she's not mine. But she feels like mine. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Mrs. Carter reached across the table to squeeze Anna's hand. You've loved her, fed her, kept her alive through a brutal winter. That makes you her mother in every way that matters. But honey, if this man really is her uncle, if he has a legal claim, I know. Anna blinked back tears. I know he could take her. I know we have no right to keep her if her family wants her. But how do I give up my child? How do I hand her over to a stranger and watch him disappear with her? Mrs. Carter had no answer for that, and Anna left with the card burning like a coal in her pocket. She found Jack loading the wagon, Hope strapped to his chest in the sling he'd taken to wearing when Anna needed her hands free. The sight of them together, this big gruff man and the tiny baby gazing up at him with complete trust, made Anna's heart crack. We need to talk, she said quietly. They drove out of town in heavy silence, and only when they were alone on the mountain road did Anna tell him what Mrs. Carter had said. Jack listened without interrupting, his hands tight on the reins, his face carved from stone. An attorney from Boston, he said finally. Means he's got money, means he's got influence, means if he wants Hope, he can probably take her, legal or not. What do we do? Anna asked, hating the tremor in her voice. Jack was quiet for a long time, the wagon creaking along, Hope dozing peacefully against his chest. We could run, he said at last. Pack up, head further into the mountains. Canada, maybe. Somewhere he'd never find us. Anna's heart leaped at the possibility, then sank just as quickly. And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, always wondering if today's the day someone recognizes her? That's no life for a child. No, Jack agreed heavily. It's not. We could fight him. Legally, I mean. Hire a lawyer of our own, prove we're fit parents, that Hope is happy and healthy with us. With what money? Jack's laugh was bitter. Anna, we're barely scraping by as it is. You know what lawyers cost? And even if we could afford one, what judge is going to side with a mountain rancher and his mail-order bride over a wealthy attorney from Boston? Hope's got Blackwood blood. That's going to matter to people who make these decisions. Anna knew he was right, but the injustice of it burned. So what, we just hand her over? Write to this Henry Blackwood and tell him to come take our daughter away? She's not our daughter. Jack's voice cracked on the words. Legally, she's not. We got no papers, no adoption, nothing that gives us any claim to her. We've just been keeping her safe until her real family came for her. We are her real family. Anna's voice rose, and Hope stirred, whimpering. Anna immediately gentled her tone, reaching over to stroke the baby's head. We're the ones who've loved her, Jack. We're the ones who kept her alive. Doesn't that count for something? In a fair world, yeah. But this ain't a fair world, Anna. You know that better than anyone. They rode the rest of the way in silence, and that night, lying in bed with Hope between them, they held each other and whispered desperate plans that all fell apart under examination. Running meant a life on the edge of the law, always hiding, always afraid. Fighting meant bankruptcy and almost certain defeat. Giving Hope up meant tearing out their hearts and handing them to a stranger. There were no good choices, only different shades of loss. 3 days later, a rider appeared at the ranch just after dawn. Anna saw him from the garden where she was weeding, and her stomach dropped. He was well-dressed, riding a fine horse, and he carried himself with the confidence of a man used to getting what he wanted. Henry Blackwood had found them. Jack emerged from the barn, his rifle in the crook of his arm, positioning himself between the stranger and the house where Anna had instinctively retreated with Hope. You Monroe? The man called out. I am. State your business. Blackwood dismounted with the ease of an experienced rider, though his clothes marked him as Eastern through and through, tailored suit, polished boots, a watch chain glinting at his vest. He was perhaps 40, with dark hair graying at the temples and sharp, assessing eyes. Henry Blackwood, I believe you have something that belongs to me. I got a lot of things, Jack said evenly. You'll need to be more specific. Don't play games, Mr. Monroe. I know you're harboring my niece, the child of my late brother Robert and his wife Catherine. They were murdered by bandits on the road to Fort Laramie last February. I've been searching for the child ever since. Catherine. The dying woman had a name now. Anna clutched Hope tighter, the baby gurgling happily, oblivious to the fact that her world was about to be upended. Jack didn't move. "What makes you think I have your niece?" "I have it on good authority that a woman died at this ranch in February after being brought here by trappers. That woman was my sister-in-law, Catherine. And I know there was a child with her, a baby girl." Blackwood's voice softened slightly. "I'm not here to cause trouble, Mr. Monroe. I'm here to bring my brother's daughter home, to give her the life she deserves." "And what kind of life is that?" Anna stepped out onto the porch, Hope on her hip, her chin raised defiantly. "The life of an orphan raised by an uncle who sees her as an obligation? Who'll ship her off to boarding schools and hire nurses to do the actual raising?" Blackwood's eyes fixed on Hope, and something in his expression shifted. Surprise, relief, and something that might have been genuine emotion. "Is that her? Is that Elizabeth?" "Elizabeth, not Hope. Elizabeth Blackwood." "Her name is Hope," Anna said firmly. "Hope Monroe." "Her name," Blackwood said with forced patience, "is Elizabeth Catherine Blackwood. She was named after her grandmother, and she's the rightful heir to the Blackwood fortune, which is considerable. I'm prepared to provide her with everything, the finest education, a place in society, opportunities beyond anything you could offer her here. We can offer her love," Anna shot back. "We can offer her a family who wants her for herself, not for some inheritance." "Mrs. Monroe," Blackwood's tone was gentler now, almost pitying. "I understand you've grown attached to the child, but surely you can see that keeping her here in these conditions would be selfish. Elizabeth deserves more than a hard-scrabble life on a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere." The words hit like physical blows. Failing ranch. Middle of nowhere. Everything that made their life small and insufficient laid out in stark terms. "Our ranch isn't failing," Jack said, his voice dangerously quiet. "And our life might not be fancy, but it's honest. The girl is healthy, happy, loved. That's more than a lot of children get, fortune or no fortune. Be that as it may, I have legal guardianship papers drawn up." Blackwood reached into his jacket and pulled out a sheaf of documents. "I'm Elizabeth's closest living relative. I have every right to take custody of her, and I intend to do so, peacefully, if possible." Anna's arms tightened around Hope so hard the baby squirmed in protest. "And if we refuse?" "Then I'll get the marshal involved, and I'll win, Mrs. Monroe. I guarantee it. I'm an attorney, and I have resources you can't imagine. I'll tie you up in legal battles until you're bankrupt, and I'll still get Elizabeth in the end. All you'll accomplish is delaying the inevitable and destroying yourselves in the process." The terrible thing was, Anna believed him. This man had power, money, the law on his side. He could crush them like insects and barely notice the effort. "At least let us say goodbye," Jack said, and the defeat in his voice broke Anna's heart. "You give us that much. One more night." Blackwood studied them both, his expression calculating. Finally, he nodded. "One night. I'll stay at the trading post and return tomorrow at noon. Have her ready." He paused, then added with what seemed like genuine sympathy, "I know this is hard, but you must understand, Elizabeth is a Blackwood. She has a legacy waiting for her. You'd be condemning her to poverty if you kept her here." He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Anna and Jack standing in their yard, their world crumbling around them. Anna carried Hope inside on legs that felt like water, her mind refusing to process what had just happened. One night. They had one night left with their daughter, and then she would be gone forever, taken away to a life of privilege and opportunity that Anna couldn't compete with. Jack followed her in, closing the door with careful precision, and they stood there in the main room that had become their home, their sanctuary, now feeling like a prison. "We could still run," Jack said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "And condemn her to a life on the run? Always hiding, never settled, never safe?" Anna shook her head. "We can't do that to her, Jack, no matter how much it kills us." "Then what do we do?" His voice cracked. "How do we just hand her over? How do I watch you give up our baby?" "She was never ours to keep." Anna's tears fell freely now, dropping onto Hope's dark hair. "We were just borrowing her. We were just keeping her safe until her real family found her." "We are her real family!" Jack's shout startled Hope, who began to cry. He immediately gentled, reaching for her, and Anna passed her over, watching as this strong man cradled their daughter and wept openly. We're the ones who love her. We're the ones who know that she likes to be bounced when she's fussy, and that she hates having her face washed, and that she falls asleep fastest when you hum that song about the mockingbird. That bastard doesn't know any of that. He doesn't know her. But he can give her everything we can't, Anna whispered. Schools, society, a future beyond scratching survival from hard ground. How do we deny her that because we're too selfish to let go? They spent that last night holding hope between them, memorizing every detail, the whirl of hair at her crown, the dimple in her left cheek, the way her tiny fingers wrapped around Anna's thumb. They took turns rocking her, singing to her, whispering promises they knew they couldn't keep. I'll always love you, Anna murmured into Hope's, no, Elizabeth's, soft hair. No matter where you go or what you become, you'll always be my daughter. My hope, my miracle. Jack carved a small wooden horse and pressed it into the baby's hand. So you remember us, he said roughly. So you know someone loved you before the fancy life took over. As dawn broke, they dressed her in her best clothes. A little dress Anna had sewn from fabric bought with her last precious dollars. They packed a small bag with her things, and Anna included one of Sarah's quilts, thinking that Elizabeth should have something beautiful, something made with love by a woman who understood what it meant to be a mother in this harsh land. When Henry Blackwood arrived precisely at noon, they were waiting on the porch. Anna held Elizabeth one last time, breathing in her baby smell, feeling her small heart beat against her chest. Then, with hands that shook so badly she could barely control them, she handed her daughter to a stranger. Take care of her, Anna managed, her voice breaking. Please. She's everything. Blackwood's expression was surprisingly gentle as he took the baby. I will. I promise you, she'll have the best of everything. The best schools, the best opportunities. She'll want for nothing. She'll want for us, Jack said harshly. But I guess that doesn't matter to people like you. It matters, Blackwood said quietly. More than you know. But sometimes love means letting go. Surely you understand that. He settled Elizabeth into a carrier attached to his saddle, and the baby began to fuss, reaching back toward Anna with small, desperate hands that tore Anna's heart to shreds. Mama! It was the first time Elizabeth had made that sound, something approximating that word, and Anna collapsed against Jack, sobbing so hard she thought she might die from it. Blackwood mounted his horse, Elizabeth crying in earnest now, and for a moment he hesitated. For what it's worth, he said, I can see you loved her. I can see she was happy here. That means something. Not enough, Anna choked out. It didn't mean enough. He rode away and they watched until he disappeared into the trees, Elizabeth's cries fading to silence, leaving behind only the wind in the pines and the sound of Anna's breaking heart. Jack held her while she screamed her grief into his chest, while she beat her fists against him because there was nowhere else to put the rage and pain. He held her through the afternoon and into the evening, when she finally went silent, hollowed out, empty of everything but ache. That night, the house was too quiet. Anna couldn't bear to look at the empty cradle, at the toys scattered on the floor, at all the evidence of the life they'd built and lost. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, and Jack followed her, equally lost, both of them drowning in a grief too big for words. I can't stay here, Anna said finally, her voice raw. Jack, I can't stay in this house where everything reminds me of her. I can't do it. Then we'll leave. Jack's response was immediate, desperate. We'll sell the ranch, go somewhere new, start over. There is no starting over from this. Anna turned to face him, and the devastation in his eyes mirrored her own. She was our second chance, our proof that we could have something good, and she's gone. We still have each other, Jack said, reaching for her hands. Anna, we still have us. Is that enough? The question came out harsh, cruel. Is it enough to watch you grieve another child? To know that every time you look at me, you'll remember what we lost? Don't do this. Jack's grip tightened. Don't push me away because you're hurting. We face this together, same as we've faced everything else. But Anna couldn't hear him through the roar of her pain. She pulled away and retreated to their bedroom, the room they'd shared for such a brief, precious time, and closed the door. She lay in the dark, listening to Jack move around the house, heard him in the main room, probably drinking, probably staring at the empty cradle. She wanted to go to him, wanted to seek comfort in his arms, but she was too broken, too raw. The wound was too fresh. Somewhere in the deepest part of night, she heard Jack's footsteps approach the bedroom door. He stood there for a long time, and Anna held her breath, waiting for him to come in, to insist they face this together. But he didn't. He walked away, and Anna heard the front door open and close. Through the window, she saw him heading to the barn, seeking solace in work or solitude, or maybe just escape from the suffocating grief that filled the house. The days that followed were a blur of gray. Anna functioned on some mechanical level, cooking meals neither of them ate, washing clothes they barely wore, going through the motions of living while feeling completely dead inside. Jack threw himself into the ranch work with manic intensity, leaving before dawn and returning after dark, his hands bloody from repairs he attacked with savage focus. They barely spoke. When they passed each other in the house, they moved like strangers, all the intimacy they'd built evaporating in the face of shared loss. At night, they lay on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to touch, locked in separate prisons of grief. 2 weeks after Elizabeth left, Anna was working in the garden, the one thing that still required her attention, the plants needing water regardless of human suffering, when she heard a horse approaching. Her heart leaped painfully. Maybe Blackwood had brought her back. Maybe he'd realized his mistake. Maybe... But it wasn't Blackwood. It was Martha Harper from the trading post, her round face creased with concern. "Anna, honey." She climbed down from her wagon with surprising agility for a woman her size. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." Anna's defenses, already battered, crumbled completely. "She's gone. He took her, and she's gone, and I don't know how to survive this." Martha pulled her into a fierce embrace, and Anna wept on her shoulder, this near stranger offering the comfort Jack couldn't seem to give anymore. "It's not fair," Anna sobbed. "It's not fair that we loved her and lost her. It's not fair that we finally had something good, and it got ripped away." "No, honey, it's not fair at all." Martha stroked her hair like Anna was a child herself. "But you listen to me. You and Jack, you gave that baby something precious. You gave her love. You kept her alive when she should have died. That matters. That will always matter, even if she never knows it." "How do I keep going?" Anna pulled back, wiping her eyes. "How do I wake up every day to this empty house and this empty life?" "The same way you've survived everything else." Martha's eyes were fierce. "By being stronger than you think you are, by leaning on the people who love you, and honey, that man in your barn loves you something fierce. I've seen the way he looks at you. Don't push him away because you're both drowning. Drown together if you have to, but don't let this break what you built." After Martha left, pressing bread in a casserole into Anna's hands, making her promise to eat, Anna stood in her garden and looked toward the barn. She could see Jack inside, hammering at something with more force than necessary, working out his grief through violence against wood and metal. Martha was right. They were drowning separately when they should be drowning together. This loss was too big for one person to carry alone. It was too big for two people to carry alone. But maybe they could carry it together. Maybe that was the only way through. Anna walked to the barn, her feet crunching on gravel, and stopped in the doorway. Jack looked up, his face haggard, his eyes red-rimmed, and for a moment they just stared at each other across the space that had grown between them. "I'm sorry," Anna said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry I shut you out. I'm sorry I made you grieve alone. I didn't know how to share this pain. It felt too big." Jack set down his hammer and crossed to her in 3 long strides. "I'm sorry too. I should have fought harder for her. I should have found a way to keep her. I failed you. I failed both of you." "You didn't fail anyone." Anna reached up to touch his face, feeling the rasp of several days' beard growth. "We both did everything we could. Sometimes everything isn't enough. Sometimes the world is just cruel and unfair, and there's nothing we can do about it." "I miss her," Jack whispered. "Every minute of every day I miss her." "Me too." Anna pulled him close, and they held each other in the dim barn, surrounded by the smell of hay and leather and hard work, and they finally grieved together. They cried for Elizabeth, for the future they'd imagined, for the family that had been stolen away. They cried for themselves, for the hole in their hearts that would never quite heal. And when the tears finally subsided, they walked back to the house hand in hand, and Anna knew that Martha had been right. They would survive this. They would bear this unbearable loss together, because that's what family did. That's what love meant. It wouldn't be easy. Some days would be worse than others. Some days Anna would hear a baby cry in her dreams and wake up reaching for a child who wasn't there. Some days Jack would start to carve a toy and have to set it aside because the memory was too sharp. But they would face those days together, and maybe, eventually, the good days would start to outnumber the bad. Maybe, eventually, they would learn to live with the loss instead of drowning in it. Maybe, eventually, they would find a way to be happy again, even with the Elizabeth-shaped hole in their hearts. But that was for the future. For now, it was enough to hold each other and survive one more day. For now, it was enough to still be standing, together. Summer came hard and fast that year, the sun beating down on the high country with an intensity that felt personal, like the world itself was angry. Anna worked the garden with mechanical precision, her hands moving through familiar motions while her mind stayed carefully blank. Thinking hurt too much. Remembering was worse, so she focused on the immediate, the weeds that needed pulling, the soil that needed watering, the endless small tasks that filled the hours between dawn and dusk. Jack worked himself nearly to death. He repaired every inch of fence on the property, rebuilt the barn door that had been sagging for years, dug a new well when the old one started running dry. He came in each night exhausted enough to fall into bed without the energy for conversation, which suited them both. They moved around each other like ghosts haunting the same house, present but not really there, connected but fundamentally alone. 3 weeks after Elizabeth left, Anna was hanging laundry when she heard voices on the road. Multiple riders, approaching fast. Her hands froze on the clothesline, her heart hammering. Not again. She couldn't survive another loss, another threat, another upheaval. But when the riders came into view, they weren't bandits or lawyers. They were a family. A man driving a wagon piled high with belongings, a woman beside him holding an infant, and 3 children of varying ages perched among the household goods. They looked exhausted, dust-covered, and desperately hopeful as they pulled to a stop in the yard. "Excuse me, ma'am," the man called out, removing his hat. He was young, maybe 30, with the lean build of someone who'd known hard times. "We're looking for the Monroe Ranch. Heard they might have work available?" Anna blinked, confused. "This is the Monroe Ranch, but there's no work here. We barely manage ourselves." "Are you Mrs. Monroe?" the woman asked, shifting the baby on her hip. She had kind eyes and a mouth set in determined lines. "Martha Harper at the trading post said you and your husband might be willing to take on help. Said you'd lost a child recently and might need—" She stopped, color flooding her cheeks. "I'm sorry. That was indelicate of me." Jack emerged from the barn, his expression wary. "What's this about, Anna?" "They're looking for work. Say Martha sent them." Jack's eyes narrowed as he approached the wagon, taking in the family's worn clothes and thin faces. "I can't pay wages, barely making ends meet as it is." "We don't need wages." The man climbed down, extending his hand. "Name's Thomas Garrett. This is my wife Sarah and our children, Michael, Emma, little John, and the baby, Grace. We're homesteaders, or we were trying to be. Claim up north got flooded out. Lost everything. We just need a place to stay while we get back on our feet. We'll work for room and board, help with whatever needs doing." Sarah Garrett. Anna felt the name hit her like a fist. Another Sarah. Another family trying to survive in this unforgiving land. She looked at the children. The oldest boy couldn't be more than 8, and the youngest was maybe 3 months old, almost exactly Elizabeth's age. "No," Anna said sharply, surprising herself. "I'm sorry, but no, we can't. We don't have room for—" Her breath was coming fast now, panic rising. She couldn't look at that baby, couldn't have a constant reminder of what she'd lost living under her roof. "Anna." Jack's hand found her elbow, steadying. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Inside?" She let him lead her into the house, her whole body trembling. I can't do it, Jack. I can't have a baby here. Every time I see her, I'll think of Elizabeth. It'll kill me. Or maybe it'll save you. Jack's voice was gentle but firm. Anna, we're dying here. Slowly, inch by inch, we're dying. That family out there, they need help. Maybe we need them just as much. Maybe having people around, having life and noise and purpose, maybe that's what we need to start healing. I don't want to heal. The words burst out before Anna could stop them. I want my daughter back. I want to turn back time and refuse to open the door when Henry Blackwood came. I want to run away with her and never look back. I don't want to heal from losing her. That feels like forgetting her. You'll never forget her. Jack pulled Anna into his arms, and she went rigid against him before slowly, reluctantly softening. She's written on your heart, Anna, on both our hearts. But staying frozen in grief isn't honoring her memory. It's just dying slowly instead of living. Anna buried her face in his chest and let herself cry, something she'd been holding back for weeks, trying to be strong, trying to survive. But Jack was right. They weren't surviving. They were just going through the motions, waiting for time to pass, marking days on a calendar that didn't matter anymore. What if I can't do it? She whispered. What if I look at that baby and all I feel is pain? Then we'll deal with it, together. Jack pulled back enough to look at her face. But Anna, we gotta try something. This half-life we're living, it's not enough. For either of us. Anna thought about the long, empty days. The silence that pressed down like a physical weight. The careful way they avoided the corner where Elizabeth's cradle had sat. The way they both flinched at the sound of babies crying in town. 1 month, she said finally. We'll try it for 1 month. If it's too hard, if I can't... 1 month, Jack agreed. And if it doesn't work, we'll help them find somewhere else. Fair? Anna nodded and let Jack lead her back outside, where the Garrett family waited with the patient resignation of people who'd learned not to expect much from the world. 1 month trial, Jack announced. You work the ranch? Help with planting and harvest? General maintenance? We provide housing and food. After a month, we'll reassess. Sound fair? Thomas Garrett's face split into a grin so wide it transformed him. More than fair, Mr. Monroe. You won't regret this, I promise you. But Anna was already regretting it as she watched Sarah climb down from the wagon with baby Grace, as she heard the infant's soft coos and saw the way Sarah tucked the blanket more securely around her daughter. Everything about it hurt. The tender gestures, the protective instinct, the easy confidence of a mother with her child. They settled the Garretts in the barn loft, which was larger and more comfortable than it sounded. Jack and Thomas spent the afternoon rigging up a curtain for privacy and moving in straw mattresses, while Anna helped Sarah organize their meager belongings and tried very hard not to look at the baby. But Grace had other ideas. She fussed and cried until Sarah, looking exhausted and apologetic, asked if Anna minded holding her while Sarah unpacked. I can't, Anna started. But Sarah was already pressing the warm, wiggling bundle into her arms, and suddenly Anna was holding a baby again, feeling that familiar weight, smelling that sweet infant smell that was both torture and comfort. Grace stopped crying immediately, her dark eyes, so like Elizabeth's, fixing on Anna's face with that intense infant focus. She made a soft cooing sound and grabbed Anna's finger with surprising strength, and Anna felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been sealed tight with grief. She likes you, Sarah said with a tired smile. She's been so fussy all day, but look at her now, calm as can be. Anna couldn't speak. She just held this stranger's baby and felt tears sliding down her cheeks, mourning the child she'd lost while simultaneously feeling the first faint stirrings of something that wasn't quite hope, but wasn't despair either. Maybe it was just the recognition that life went on. Babies kept being born. Mothers kept loving them. The world kept turning despite individual grief. That night, with the Garrett family settled overhead, Anna lay beside Jack and listened to the sounds of other people in their space. Children's voices, Sarah singing softly to Grace, Thomas's low rumble as he told his older children a bedtime story. It should have felt invasive, but instead it felt alive. The house felt alive again. You did good today, Jack murmured in the darkness. With the baby. It hurt, Anna admitted, but not as much as I thought it would. Is that wrong? Does that mean I'm forgetting Elizabeth? It means you're surviving. Jack's hand found hers under the blanket. And surviving is the first step to living again. The next morning, Anna woke to the sound of children laughing, and for a moment before full consciousness returned, she felt something like happiness. Then memory crashed back. Elizabeth was gone. These weren't her children. This wasn't her family. But the laughter continued, bright and genuine, and Anna found herself getting up and moving toward it despite the ache in her chest. In the yard, Thomas had the 3 older children helping with chores, turning work into a game. Michael was racing his sister Emma to see who could carry more water from the well, while little John collected eggs with the serious concentration of a much older child. They were loud, chaotic, full of energy and life, and watching them, Anna felt something shift inside her. She'd been so focused on what she'd lost that she'd forgotten what she still had. She had Jack, she had this ranch, she had the capacity to love, to help, to matter in someone's life. Maybe not as a mother to Elizabeth, but in other ways. Different ways. Mrs. Monroe? Emma appeared at her elbow, all freckles and missing teeth. She couldn't be more than 6. Mama says, can you show her where the cooking supplies are? She wants to make breakfast to thank you for letting us stay. Anna looked down at this earnest little face and felt her heart squeeze. Of course, come on, I'll show both of you. Sarah proved to be an excellent cook and even better company. As they worked together preparing breakfast for the expanded household, Anna found herself actually talking, really talking, for the first time in weeks. Sarah had a way of drawing her out, asking questions that felt interested rather than intrusive, sharing stories of her own struggles that made Anna feel less alone in her grief. We lost a baby last year, Sarah said quietly as she kneaded dough for biscuits, between John and Grace. A little girl. She only lived 3 days. Anna's hand stilled on the eggs she was cracking. I'm so sorry. It nearly broke me. Sarah's voice was steady, but Anna could hear the old pain underneath. For months, I couldn't function. Couldn't care for the children I still had. Couldn't be a wife to Thomas. I just disappeared inside myself. You know what brought me back? What? Emma. Sarah smiled, glancing toward the window where her daughter was still racing her brother. She came into my room one day and climbed into bed with me and said, Mama, I miss you. Please come back. And I realized I was so busy grieving the child I'd lost that I was losing the children I still had. So I made a choice. I chose to come back. To live. To love the people who were still here, still needing me. Anna blinked back tears. But don't you feel guilty? Like you're betraying the one you lost by moving on? Every day. Sarah's honesty was brutal and beautiful. But I also know that my daughter, the one who died, wouldn't want me to stop living. She'd want me to love her siblings, to give them the best life I could. So that's what I try to do. Some days are harder than others, but I keep trying. They worked in companionable silence after that, and when breakfast was ready, they called everyone to the table. Anna watched the Garrett family pile in, Thomas lifting John onto a chair, Emma chattering about the eggs she'd collected, Michael already reaching for biscuits, Sarah settling Grace in the crook of her arm while somehow still managing to serve food. And Jack, watching it all with an expression that was part wonder, part pain, but also something that looked almost like contentment. The month passed faster than Anna expected. Thomas proved invaluable around the ranch, tackling repairs and improvements that Jack had been putting off for years because there was always something more urgent. Sarah took over much of the cooking and helped Anna expand the garden, her knowledge of what would grow in difficult conditions doubling their potential harvest. The children brought noise and chaos, and a kind of joy that neither Anna nor Jack had realized they'd been missing. And baby Grace became the unexpected center of everything. Anna found herself volunteering to hold her while Sarah worked, found herself singing the same songs she'd sung to Elizabeth, found herself falling in love despite every instinct telling her to protect her heart, because loving Grace didn't mean forgetting Elizabeth. It just meant her heart was big enough for both. One evening, as Anna rocked Grace to sleep while Sarah got the other children ready for bed, Jack came to sit beside her. "Month's up tomorrow," he said quietly. Anna looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms, then up at her husband. "I know. You want them to stay?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with significance. Saying yes meant opening their lives permanently to other people, to the risk of more loss, to the constant reminder of what they'd had and lost with Elizabeth. But saying no meant going back to that gray half-life, that careful isolation, that slow death by grief. Yeah, Anna said softly. I want them to stay. If they want to stay. Jack's smile was the first real one she'd seen in weeks. Thomas already asked me. Said they'd like to make it permanent if we're willing. Work as partners. He handles the livestock and heavy repairs. I focus on trapping and bringing in cash money. Split the profits, build this place up into something sustainable. And Sarah? Seems to me she and you have already worked that out. Jack gestured to the kitchen, where Sarah was teaching Emma to make bread, their heads bent together over the dough. You're good together, good for each other. Anna knew he was right. Sarah had become something she'd never had before, a true friend. Someone who understood loss and survival, who didn't judge or pity, who just existed alongside her in mutual understanding. The next morning, they made it official. Thomas and Jack shook hands on a partnership that would transform the struggling ranch into a genuine homestead. Sarah and Anna planned out an expanded garden and talked about maybe getting chickens in the spring, their voices animated with something that sounded like hope. And Anna held Grace and felt her heart expand rather than break, felt love flow in to fill the spaces grief had carved out. That night, lying in bed with Jack's arm around her, Anna spoke into the darkness. Do you think Elizabeth's happy? Wherever she is? I think she's got everything money can buy. Jack's voice was carefully neutral. That's not what I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. I hope so. I hope Blackwood's giving her love along with all that privilege. I hope she's got someone who rocks her when she cries and sings to her and makes her feel safe. He paused. But yeah, I wonder. I wonder if she'll grow up knowing she was loved before the Blackwood money got to her. If she'll remember us at all. She won't, Anna said, facing that truth squarely. She's too young. We'll just be shadows if we're anything. But Jack, we loved her. For the time we had her, we loved her completely. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. Jack pulled her closer. And Anna, I've been thinking, maybe someday when we're ready, we could try for our own. I know what the doctors said. I know what everyone in Cedar Ridge thought. But maybe, no. Anna cut him off gently. Jack, I appreciate what you're trying to say, but I've made my peace with it. I can't carry a child. My body won't do it. And that's okay. Because there are other ways to be a mother. Look at what we have now. A house full of children who need adults to care about them, to guide them. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough. Jack was silent, and Anna could feel him processing, accepting. Okay, he said finally. Okay. But Anna, if someday another child needs us, like Elizabeth needed us, then we'll be there, Anna promised. We'll always be there. The weeks turned into months, and the ranch transformed. With two families working it, improvements happened at a pace that had seemed impossible before. They built a proper house for the Garretts, small but sturdy, attached to the main cabin. They expanded the barn, increased the herd, planted winter wheat that actually took root in the stubborn soil. The children thrived. Michael grew stronger, more confident, taking on responsibilities that made him stand taller. Emma lost her shyness, her laughter ringing out across the yard at all hours. Little John attached himself to Jack with the devotion of a boy who'd never had a father figure who didn't seem overwhelmed by survival. And Jack bloomed under the attention in ways that made Anna's heart ache with love for this man, who'd convinced himself he was too broken to matter to anyone. And Grace grew from an infant into a baby with personality, curious, determined, quick to smile. Anna watched her reach milestones that Elizabeth would be reaching somewhere far away, rolling over, sitting up, reaching for toys. And the pain was there, always there, but bearable now, because she wasn't grieving alone, because she had purpose beyond her loss. Sarah became the sister Anna had never had. They worked side by side in the garden, in the kitchen, in the endless tasks of keeping a frontier household running, and they talked about everything and nothing, about their pasts and their hopes, about their fears and their small triumphs. Sarah never pushed, never tried to fix Anna's grief, just existed alongside it with the understanding of someone who carried her own losses. One afternoon in late September, as they preserved the garden harvest, beans and tomatoes and squash that would see them through the winter, Sarah spoke without looking up from her work. "You know what Martha told me before we came here?" "What?" Anna asked, stirring a pot of boiling water for canning. "She said you and Jack had been dying before we arrived. Said you'd lost a child and it had nearly destroyed you both. She said she sent us here as much for your sake as ours." Anna's hands stilled. "I didn't know that." "I'm glad she did." Sarah met her eyes, her expression serious. "Anna, you and Jack saved our family, gave us a home when we had nowhere to go. But I think maybe we saved you too. Maybe we saved each other." Anna felt tears prick her eyes. Happy tears this time, not grief. "Yeah, maybe we did." That evening, with both families gathered around the expanded dinner table, Anna looked at the faces surrounding her. Thomas, laughing at something Jack said about a stubborn cow. Sarah, bouncing Grace on her knee while simultaneously cutting food for John. Emma and Michael arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was to do dishes. Jack, meeting her eyes across the chaos with a look that said he was thinking the same thing she was. This wasn't the family they'd planned. This wasn't the life they'd imagined. But it was real, and it was good, and it was theirs. After dinner, after the children were in bed and the Garretts had retired to their quarters, Anna and Jack sat on the porch in the cooling evening air. The stars were coming out, bright and clear in the mountain sky, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called to its pack. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Anna asked, "after Caleb left and it was just us?" "That you could have left with him." "And I said I had nowhere else to go." Anna leaned against his shoulder. "I thought that was true. I thought I was trapped here by circumstance, by lack of options. But Jack, I was wrong. This isn't a trap. It's not exile. It's home. The first real home I've ever had." Jack's arm came around her, solid and warm. "You made it a home. You took this dead place and brought it back to life. The house, the land, me, you brought all of it back to life. We did it together." Anna tilted her head up to look at him. "Everything we've survived, everything we've built, we did it together, the good and the bad, the joy and the grief. Together." "Together," Jack agreed, and kissed her with a tenderness that still made her heart race even after months of marriage, months of partnership, months of learning each other's rhythms and needs. A sound from inside made them both tense, crying, high and distressed. But before either could move, they heard Sarah's soft voice soothing Grace back to sleep, and they relaxed again. "Strange, isn't it?" Jack mused. "How life works out. 6 months ago, we were alone and dying inside. Now we've got a whole household, people depending on us, children to care for. Sometimes I can't believe it's real." "It's real." Anna laced her fingers through his. "And it's ours. Not the life anyone would have predicted for the cursed widow and the hermit rancher, but ours nonetheless." Inside, the house settled around them, full of sleeping children and borrowed family, and the kind of contentment that came from hard work and mutual respect. Outside, the mountains loomed against the stars, beautiful and harsh and unforgiving. But here, in this small pocket of civilization carved from wilderness, Anna and Jack had created something that could weather any storm. They had created a home, not through blood or traditional family ties, but through choice and determination, and the refusal to let grief be the final word. And if sometimes Anna still woke in the night thinking she heard Elizabeth crying, if sometimes Jack still touched the small wooden horse he'd carved and never given to the child who was meant to have it, well, that was the price of having loved. The scars that proved they'd survived something that should have destroyed them. But they were still here, still standing, still building something beautiful from the wreckage of what they'd lost. And that, Anna thought as Jack led her inside to their warm bed in their full house, with their chosen family sleeping peacefully around them, that was more than enough. That was everything. Winter arrived early that year, the first snow falling in mid-October and not letting up for 3 days straight. Anna stood at the window watching the white curtain descend over the mountains, and for the first time since coming to this place, She didn't feel the creeping dread that winter had always brought before. The house was warm, well stocked with food they'd preserved together, filled with people who mattered. They were ready. Jack came up behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. "Storm's gonna be a bad one. Good thing we got the Garrett's addition finished when we did." "Good thing we have the Garretts at all," Anna corrected, leaning back against him. Through the wall they could hear Sarah reading to the children, her voice rising and falling in the rhythm of a familiar story. "I can't imagine going through another winter alone, just the two of us in the silence." "We weren't really living then," Jack said quietly. "Just existing, waiting for something to change." And it did. Anna turned in his arms to face him. Everything changed. We changed. Before Jack could respond, a sharp knock at the door made them both freeze. Visitors in weather like this were unusual at best, dangerous at worst. Jack grabbed his rifle from above the doorframe while Anna moved to stand behind him, her heart already racing with possibilities. When Jack opened the door, a figure stood hunched against the driving snow. A woman, slight and shivering, her cloak inadequate against the cold. Behind her, barely visible through the white, was a horse tied to their porch rail. "Please," the woman gasped, her voice raw. "Please help me. I can't go any further." Jack and Anna exchanged a glance, and Anna saw her own memory reflected in his eyes. Another storm, another desperate woman, another night that had changed everything. But where Anna felt fear, Jack's face showed only determination. "Get her inside," he ordered, already moving to help. "I'll see to the horse." Anna pulled the woman across the threshold, shocked at how light she was. How cold. The stranger's lips were blue, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't manage the ties on her cloak. Anna helped her remove the sodden garment and guided her to the chair closest to the stove. "Sarah," Anna called, "I need hot water and blankets." Sarah appeared immediately, took one look at the situation, and disappeared again, returning moments later with an armful of quilts and a steaming kettle. Together they wrapped the woman and pressed hot tea into her trembling hands. "Thank you," the stranger managed between chattering teeth. "Thank you. I thought I was going to die out there." "What were you doing traveling in this weather?" Anna asked, kneeling beside the chair to help remove the woman's wet boots. "The trading post is 10 miles back. You should have stopped there." "I couldn't." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "They're looking for me. If I stopped anywhere public, they'd find me." Anna's hands stilled. "Who's looking for you?" But before the woman could answer, Jack came back inside, stamping snow from his boots, and the stranger's eyes went wide with recognition and terror. She tried to stand, to run, but her legs wouldn't support her and she collapsed back into the chair. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Please don't send me back. I know you probably think I'm terrible. I know what I did was wrong, but please." "We don't know you," Jack interrupted, his voice carefully neutral. "And we don't know what you're talking about." The woman stared at him, confusion replacing fear. "You're Jack Monroe, aren't you? Of the Monroe Ranch in the high country?" "I am." "And you're Anna Monroe? You took in a baby last winter. A baby girl." Anna felt the world tilt. "How do you know about that?" The stranger's laugh was bitter, broken. "Because I'm the one who told Henry Blackwood where to find her. I'm the one who sold you out for $500. And now—" Her voice cracked. "Now I need you to save me the way you saved that baby." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the children in the next room seemed to sense the gravity of the moment and went quiet. Anna felt rage building in her chest, hot and sharp, threatening to choke her. "You!" The word came out like poison. "You took our daughter from us for money." "I didn't know," the woman cried. "I didn't know what she meant to you. Pete and the others, they made it sound like you were just keeping her temporarily, like you'd be glad to get rid of the burden. They said Blackwood was her real family, that he deserved to have her, and I needed the money so badly. My husband—" She stopped, pressing a hand to her mouth. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything, but I'm so sorry." Jack's hand on Anna's shoulder was the only thing that kept her from lunging at this woman who'd destroyed their family. His grip was firm, grounding, and when Anna looked up at him, she saw not rage, but something else. That same calculating look he got when facing a difficult decision. Sarah, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the stranger. Take the children to your quarters. Keep them there until I say otherwise. Sarah hesitated only a moment before herding Emma, Michael, and John through the connecting door, Grace bundled in her arms. Thomas appeared in their wake, his face grim as he took in the scene. Want me to stay? He asked Jack. Yeah, might need you to ride to Fort Laramie if this goes bad. The stranger's eyes went even wider. You're going to turn me in. That depends, Anna said, surprised by how level her voice sounded despite the fury coursing through her veins. Tell us everything. Who you are, why you're running, and why in heaven's name you thought we'd help you after what you did. The woman's name was Margaret Dawson, and her story spilled out in broken fragments between sobs. She'd been married to one of Pete's associates, a man who'd seemed charming until the wedding and turned cruel the day after. He'd gambled away everything they had, borrowed money from dangerous people, and when he couldn't pay, he'd offered Margaret as collateral. He sold me, she whispered, the words barely audible. Like livestock, to cover his debts. Said I was his property, he could do what he wanted. So I ran, took what money I had hidden, the $500 from Blackwood, and ran. But they're hunting me. If they find me, they'll kill me, or worse. Anna wanted to feel nothing but hatred for this woman, but the truth was more complicated. Margaret was another victim of cruel men and a cruel world, trying to survive the only way she knew how. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it explained it. Why come here? Jack asked. Why not go to Fort Laramie, get the marshal involved? Margaret's laugh was harsh. The marshal is one of the men my husband owes money to. He's part of the group hunting me. Where else could I go? I remembered what Pete said about you two, that you'd fought him off to protect a baby that wasn't even yours. I thought maybe if you were that kind of people, maybe you'd help the woman who destroyed our family? Anna finished coldly. I know I don't deserve it. Margaret's tears flowed freely now. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I'm begging you, please. I have nowhere else to go, no one else who might understand what it's like to be powerless, to be discarded, to be worth less than the money someone can make off you. The words hit Anna like a physical blow. Because she did understand. She understood what it felt like to be sent away because she was inconvenient, to be worth only what someone would pay to be rid of her. She understood desperation and shame and the lengths survival could drive a person to. She looked at Jack and saw the same struggle playing out on his face. This woman had taken Elizabeth from them, had set in motion the chain of events that had nearly broken them both. By any measure of justice, they should turn her away, let her face the consequences of her choices. But they weren't those people anymore. The Anna and Jack who might have chosen revenge had been transformed by loss and love, and the hard work of building something good from the ashes of what they'd lost. You can stay tonight, Anna said finally, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. The storm's too dangerous to send anyone out in, but tomorrow, when it clears, you're gone. Jack's hand tightened on her shoulder, and she knew he understood the significance of what she'd just done. Chosen mercy over vengeance, even when vengeance would have been justified. Margaret's relief was palpable. Thank you so much. I'll leave first thing, I promise. I won't cause you any trouble. You already caused us more trouble than you can imagine, Anna said sharply. But we're not murderers, and sending you back out in that storm would be murder. So you stay tonight, and then you're Thomas's problem. Thomas, who'd been silent throughout the exchange, spoke up. My problem? You're riding to Fort Laramie tomorrow, Jack said, taking Margaret with you. You drop her at the stage station. Make sure she gets on a coach headed east, far away from here. You don't tell anyone where she came from or where she's going. Understood? Understood, Thomas agreed, though his expression suggested he had questions he was saving for later. They set Margaret up in the corner of the main room, as far from Anna and Jack's bedroom as possible, and everyone retreated to their separate spaces. But Anna couldn't sleep. She lay beside Jack, staring at the ceiling, her mind churning with emotions too complex to name. You did the right thing, Jack murmured in the darkness. Did I? That woman took Elizabeth from us, Jack. She destroyed us for money, and I just gave her shelter and safety? You gave her what you needed when you first came here. A chance to survive, to start over, to be something other than what circumstances made her. Jack rolled onto his side to face her. Anna, if we'd turned her away, If we'd let her die or get dragged back to men who'd hurt her, we'd have become the same kind of people who sent you here to fail. The same kind of people who took Elizabeth from us without caring what it would do to us. We'd have let bitterness poison everything we've built. Anna knew he was right, but it still hurt. I hate that I understand her. I hate that when she talked about being powerless and discarded, I saw myself. I wanted to hate her purely, completely, but I can't. That's what makes you good, Jack said, pulling her close. That's what makes us different from the people who've hurt us. We choose kindness even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. They held each other in the darkness, and Anna let herself grieve again, not just for Elizabeth, but for all the ways the world broke people and forced them into impossible choices. For Margaret, selling information to survive. For her younger self, accepting exile rather than fighting back. For Sarah Garrett, losing a child and having to keep going for the ones who remained. For Jack, burying his family and shutting himself away rather than risk more pain. And for Elizabeth, wherever she was, growing up with Blackwood wealth, but without the fierce, desperate love Anna and Jack had given her. The storm blew itself out by morning, leaving the world buried in fresh snow that glittered painfully bright in the sunshine. True to his word, Thomas prepared to ride to Fort Laramie with Margaret. The woman looked better after a night's rest and hot food, but her eyes when they met Anna's were full of guilt and gratitude in equal measure. I meant what I said, Margaret offered quietly as Thomas saddled the horses. I'm sorry for what I did, for what it cost you. I hope someday you can forgive me. Anna wanted to say she already had, wanted to be the kind of person who could absolve this woman's sins with grace and compassion. But she wasn't there yet. Maybe she never would be. I hope you find somewhere safe, she said instead. Somewhere far from men who think they own you, and I hope you never have to make choices like that again. I hope the same for you, Margaret replied. I hope you and your husband find happiness, despite everything. We already have, Anna said, and realized with surprise that it was true. They'd found happiness in the aftermath of loss, in the family they'd built, in the choice to keep loving despite the risks. It just looks different than we expected. Thomas and Margaret rode out an hour later, and Anna watched them disappear down the mountain road with feelings she couldn't quite name. Relief that the woman was gone. Sadness for all the broken people trying to survive in a world that seemed determined to grind them down. And something else. Maybe pride that she'd chosen kindness over cruelty, even when cruelty would have been easier. The winter stretched long and cold, but the household Anna and Jack had built weathered it together. The children grew, learned, thrived under the attention of 4 adults who cared about them. Sarah and Anna spent long hours by the fire, sewing and talking and planning for spring. Thomas and Jack worked on improvements to the ranch, building up their herd and making plans to expand. And Grace, beautiful Grace, who reminded Anna so much of the daughter she'd lost, turned 1-year-old in February. They celebrated with a cake Sarah made and small gifts the whole household had collaborated on. Watching the baby demolish her slice of cake with enthusiastic fists, Anna felt her heart swell with love for this child who wasn't hers, but who she'd helped raise nonetheless. You're thinking about her, Jack said quietly, settling beside Anna on the porch, while inside the party continued. Always, Anna admitted. I'll always wonder where she is, if she's happy, if she remembers us at all. She won't remember, Jack said, but his voice was gentle rather than harsh. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's enough that we remember, that we loved her for the time we had her. Is it enough for you? Anna asked, searching his face. Truly? Jack looked back through the window at the chaos inside. Sarah wiping cake from Grace's face, Thomas lifting John onto his shoulders, Emma and Michael arguing over whose turn it was to give Grace her present. Yeah, he said softly. Yeah, it's enough. Not because I don't miss Elizabeth. I'll miss her every day for the rest of my life. But because we didn't let losing her destroy us. We let it transform us. We opened our home and our hearts, and look what came of it. Anna followed his gaze and saw what he saw. A family. Unconventional and cobbled together from broken pieces, but real and loving, and theirs. Spring came with its usual reluctance, the snow melting slowly to reveal the land they'd worked so hard to tame. Anna and Sarah planted the garden together, their hands working the soil side by side, while the children played nearby, and Jack and Thomas repaired the winter damage to fences and buildings. It was late April when the rider appeared on the road, a lone figure on horseback, moving slowly, as if unsure of the welcome they'd receive. Anna saw him first and felt her heart stutter to a stop. She knew that horse, knew the set of those shoulders, knew before she could see his face that Henry Blackwood had returned. "Jack!" Her voice came out strangled, panicked. "Jack, it's Blackwood!" Jack was beside her in seconds, his face gone hard, his hand moving instinctively toward the rifle he'd left leaning against the barn. But before he could reach it, Anna saw something that made her blood run cold. Blackwood was carrying something, someone, a child. "Please," Blackwood called out, his voice ragged. "Please, I need help. She's sick. She's burning up with fever, and I don't know what to do." He dismounted clumsily, nearly dropping his burden, and Anna was running before she made the conscious decision to move. Because that child, that sick child, was Elizabeth. Their daughter had come home. Anna took Elizabeth from Blackwood's arms, and the weight of her was shocking. She'd grown so much in the years since they'd seen her, was walking and talking and everything a child her age should be. But right now she was limp and burning hot, her breathing shallow, her eyes glazed with fever. "How long has she been like this?" Anna demanded, already moving toward the house. 2 days, Blackwood said, stumbling after her. "Maybe 3. I've been riding for Fort Laramie, but she keeps getting worse. I saw your ranch and I remembered I didn't know where else to go." Inside, Anna laid Elizabeth on the table, just as they'd laid her dying mother over a year ago, and started stripping away layers of clothing to cool her down. Sarah appeared, took one look at the situation, and started issuing orders like a field general. "Water, cold as you can get it, cloths for compresses. Emma, go boil water for tea. Michael, run to our quarters and get my medicine box." The children scattered to obey, and Anna focused entirely on Elizabeth, this child she'd thought she'd never see again. She was bigger, yes, but also thinner than she should be, with dark circles under her eyes and a rash spreading across her chest. "Scarlet fever," Sarah said grimly, examining the rash. "I've seen it before. She needs to be kept cool, needs fluids, needs constant care. And she needs it now, or she's not going to make it." Anna's hands shook as she pressed cool cloths to Elizabeth's forehead, her chest, her wrists. "Stay with me, sweetheart," she whispered. "Please stay with me. We just got you back. You can't leave again. Please." For 2 days and nights, Anna barely left Elizabeth's side. She bathed her with cool water when the fever spiked, forced water and weak tea between her lips when she was conscious enough to swallow, held her when she cried out in delirium. Jack spelled her occasionally, and Sarah brought food Anna couldn't taste and words of encouragement Anna couldn't quite believe. And Henry Blackwood stayed, hovering in the background, useless and haunted, and clearly terrified. On the 3rd day, Elizabeth's fever finally broke. Anna was dozing in the chair beside the bed when she felt a small hand touch her face. "Mama?" Anna's eyes flew open, and there was Elizabeth, awake and lucid, her eyes clear for the first time in days. And she'd said, "Mama." She'd called Anna Mama. "I'm here, sweetheart," Anna choked out, pulling the child into her lap. "I'm right here." "I don't feel good," Elizabeth whimpered, burrowing into Anna's chest with the instinct of a child seeking comfort. "I know, baby, but you're getting better. You're going to be fine." Anna rocked her gently, tears streaming down her face. "You're going to be just fine." Jack appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up when he saw Elizabeth awake. He crossed to them in 2 strides and wrapped his arms around them both. And for a moment they were a family again, complete, the way they'd been before Blackwood had torn them apart. "I'll take her now." Blackwood's voice broke the moment. He stood in the doorway, looking haggard and older than Anna remembered. "Now that she's better, I'll take her and get out of your way. I'm sure you don't want us here." Anna's arms tightened around Elizabeth instinctively, and the child whimpered in protest. "No, please, no. I want to stay with Mama and Papa." Blackwood flinched like he'd been struck. "Elizabeth, I'm your uncle. I've been taking care of you. These people saved her life," Jack interrupted, his voice hard. Same as they saved her life when she was a baby. Same as they would have kept saving her life if you hadn't taken her away. I had every legal right. The hell with your legal rights!" Jack's shout made Elizabeth cry, and he immediately gentled, stroking her hair. "You took her from a home where she was loved and healthy and happy. Look at her now. She's half-starved and sick and calling for her mama. Her real mama, not whatever parade of nurses you've been hiring to raise her while you play at being a guardian." Blackwood's face crumpled. "I tried," he said, and the defeat in his voice was absolute. "I swear I tried, but she cried for you constantly those first months. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just cried, and I didn't know what to do. I hired the best nurses, bought her everything money could buy, but nothing helped. She wanted you. She's always wanted you." Anna looked at this man who'd taken her daughter, and instead of the powerful attorney she remembered, she saw someone just as broken as she'd been. Someone who'd lost his brother and tried to honor that loss by raising his niece, but who'd been so focused on providing material wealth that he'd forgotten children needed love more than luxury. "Why did you come back?" she asked quietly. "Really, you could have taken her to Fort Laramie, found a doctor there." "Because she was dying, and I was terrified," Blackwood said bluntly. "Because in my panic, the only thing I could think was that you'd know what to do. You'd saved her once. Maybe you could save her again, and because—" His voice broke. "Because I failed her. I took her from the people who loved her because I thought I knew better, thought I could give her more. But you can't buy love. You can't hire someone to care about a child the way a real parent does. And I've been watching her fade away for months, becoming more withdrawn, more sickly, and I didn't know how to fix it." Sarah had entered quietly during this speech, and now she spoke up. "Mr. Blackwood, may I ask you something? When Elizabeth was sick, where were you?" Blackwood looked confused. "I was in meetings. I have a law practice to run, obligations. And who was caring for her?" "The nurse. I hired a nurse specifically to—" He stopped, understanding dawning on his face. "Oh. Children don't care about money or status or legal rights," Sarah said gently. "They care about who shows up when they're scared or sick or lonely. And Mr. Blackwood, you haven't been showing up." The silence that followed was heavy with truth. Blackwood sank into a chair, his face in his hands, the picture of a man confronting his own failures. "What do I do?" he asked finally. "I made a promise to my brother that I'd care for his daughter, but clearly I'm not capable of doing it right." Anna looked down at Elizabeth, who'd fallen asleep in her arms, finally peaceful after days of fever and fear. She thought about the past year, the grief, the slow healing, the family they'd built, the choice to keep loving despite the risks. She thought about Margaret Dawson and the mercy they'd shown her, choosing kindness over vengeance, and she knew what had to happen. "You let us adopt her," Anna said quietly. "Legally, permanently. You sign papers that make her ours, and you walk away. You give her the life she deserves, the one with people who love her enough to put her first, ahead of careers and obligations and pride." Blackwood raised his head, his eyes wet. "You'd want her? After everything I put you through?" "We never stopped wanting her," Jack said roughly. "We loved her from the moment her mother died in our arms. We'll love her until the day we die. The question is whether you love her enough to let her go." Blackwood looked at Elizabeth, sleeping peacefully in Anna's arms, and something in his expression shifted. "She called you Mama," he said softly. "Even after a year with me, with nurses and tutors and everything I could provide, she called you Mama. Not me. Never me." "Children know who loves them," Sarah said. "They always know." Blackwood stood, moving to look out the window at the ranch that had become Anna and Jack's home. "My brother wanted his daughter to have every advantage: education, society, opportunities. Can you give her that here?" "We can give her love," Anna said. "We can give her a family, not just Jack and me, but Sarah and Thomas and their children. We can give her a home where she matters more than any fortune or inheritance, where she's chosen every day, not out of obligation, but out of love. Is that enough?" Blackwood was quiet for a long time, watching the children play in the yard. Emma and Michael teaching John to throw a ball, Grace toddling after them on unsteady legs. Finally, he turned back to Anna and Jack. If I do this, I want to stay part of her life. Not as a guardian, but as an uncle. I want to visit, to send letters, to know she's okay. Can you give me that?" Anna exchanged a look with Jack, and something passed between them without words. The understanding that love wasn't finite, that Elizabeth having an uncle who cared about her wouldn't diminish what she had with them. It would only add to it. "Yes," Anna said. "You can visit, you can write. You can be her uncle, the one who tells her about her parents, who keeps their memory alive. But her home is here, with us." "Then I'll have the papers drawn up," Blackwood said, his voice rough with emotion. "Legal adoption, full parental rights transferred to you. The Blackwood fortune will remain in trust for her. I won't take that away. But you'll be her parents in every way that matters." Elizabeth stirred in Anna's arms, her eyes fluttering open. She looked around, confused, until she spotted Jack and reached for him with small, urgent hands. Jack took her, settling her against his chest, and she sighed contentedly. "Papa," she murmured, already falling back to sleep. Blackwood watched this exchange with an expression that was equal parts grief and acceptance. "She was never really mine, was she? I was just keeping her until she could come home." "You did what you thought was right," Anna said, "because she could afford to be generous now. You tried to honor your brother. That matters, even if it wasn't what Elizabeth needed." "Will you tell her about them?" Blackwood asked. "Robert and Catherine? Will you make sure she knows who her parents were?" "We'll tell her," Jack promised. "We'll tell her about her mother's dying wish, about her father who died protecting his family, about her uncle who tried to give her the world. She'll know where she came from, but she'll also know where she belongs." Blackwood stayed 3 more days until Elizabeth was fully recovered and the adoption papers could be drawn up and witnessed by Reverend Walsh, who happened to be making his monthly rounds. Anna watched him say goodbye to Elizabeth, saw the tears he tried to hide as he promised to write, to visit, to be part of her life in whatever way she needed. And she saw Elizabeth watch him go with the mild interest of a child saying goodbye to a distant relative, before turning back to Anna and asking when they could go see if the new calves had been born yet. That night, with Elizabeth asleep between them in the bed they'd once shared alone, Anna and Jack held each other and marveled at the strange journey that had brought them here. "We got her back," Anna whispered. "I never thought, I didn't dare hope." "I know," Jack said, his hand finding hers across Elizabeth's sleeping form. "I know." "Do you think she'll remember the year with Blackwood?" "Probably not. She's young enough that it'll all blend together eventually. But Anna, even if she does remember, it won't matter because she knows who her real parents are. She knew it even when Blackwood was trying to convince her otherwise." Anna looked at their daughter, and she was their daughter now, legally and permanently, and felt a peace she'd never known settle over her. This child had been given to them twice, once by a dying mother's final wish, and once by an uncle who loved her enough to let her go. That felt like more than coincidence. That felt like destiny. The seasons turned, and life on the expanded Monroe Ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Elizabeth thrived, growing strong and bold and fiercely loved by every adult and child in the household. She called Anna and Jack Mama and Papa, called Sarah and Thomas Aunt Sarah and Uncle Thomas, and treated Emma, Michael, John, and Grace like the siblings they'd become. Twice a year, Henry Blackwood visited, bringing gifts and stories about her birth parents, maintaining his connection to his niece while respecting the family she'd chosen. And slowly, the wounds he'd inflicted with his original taking of Elizabeth healed, replaced by a cautious friendship built on mutual love for the child who connected them. Samuel wrote occasionally, his letters stiff and formal, asking after Anna's welfare, but never quite acknowledging the success she'd made of the life he'd tried to condemn her to. Anna wrote back with equal formality, describing her family and her home without mentioning how happy she was. Let him wonder. Let him imagine her suffering in exile while she actually thrived. On Elizabeth's 2nd birthday, the first they'd celebrate with her since she was an infant, the whole household gathered for a party that was probably too elaborate for a child who didn't understand what all the fuss was about. But Anna didn't care. They'd missed her first birthday. They'd missed months of her life. They were going to celebrate every milestone from now on with the enthusiasm of people who knew exactly how precious and fragile happiness could be. As Anna watched Elizabeth demolish her cake, with the same enthusiastic fists that Grace had employed a year earlier, watched Jack laugh as he tried to wipe frosting from her hair, watched Sarah and Thomas and their children singing and clapping. She felt something she'd never expected to feel again. She felt complete. Not because her life was perfect. It wasn't. The ranch was still hard work, the winters still brutal, money still tight more often than not. They would face more losses, more challenges, more heartbreak as the years passed. But they would face it together, as a family, as people who'd chosen each other not out of obligation or arrangement or desperation, but out of love. Anna caught Jack's eye across the chaos, and he smiled at her, that rare, genuine smile that still made her heart skip, and mouthed 3 words, "I love you." She mouthed them back, and in that moment she understood with perfect clarity that every terrible thing that had happened had been necessary to bring her here. Samuel's exile, the dying woman in the storm, losing Elizabeth to Blackwood, Margaret Dawson's betrayal, the Garretts appearing on their doorstep. Every joy and every sorrow had been a thread in the tapestry of the life they'd woven together, and it was beautiful. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Anna and Jack sat on their porch watching the stars emerge over the mountains. Elizabeth was curled between them, her small body warm and solid and real, finally and permanently theirs. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Anna asked quietly. "If you'd refused Samuel's offer? If I'd gone back to Cedar Ridge with Caleb? If we'd let Blackwood take Elizabeth without a fight?" "Every day," Jack admitted. "But then I remember that we didn't make those choices. We chose the hard road, the uncertain road, the road that led us here. And I wouldn't change it, not a single moment, not even the ones that nearly destroyed us." "Not even losing her the first time?" Jack was quiet for a long moment, his hand stroking Elizabeth's hair. "Not even that. Because if Blackwood hadn't taken her, we wouldn't have learned what she meant to us. We wouldn't have built the family we have now. Sometimes you have to lose something to understand its true value." Anna leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. "I love you, Jack Monroe, for everything you've been to me, partner, husband, father to my daughter. For choosing me when I was just a business arrangement. For loving me when I thought I was unlovable." "I love you too," Jack said, his arm coming around her. "For bringing life back to this dead place. For teaching me it was okay to love again. For being brave enough to keep loving even when the world kept taking things away." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, and Anna thought about the girl she'd been when she'd arrived here. Bitter, broken, convinced she was cursed. That girl wouldn't recognize the woman she'd become. That girl couldn't have imagined this life, this love, this completeness. Elizabeth stirred in her sleep, mumbling something that sounded like "Mama," and Anna's heart swelled so full she thought it might burst. This child, given to her twice, loved twice, saved twice. This child who'd taught her that family wasn't about blood or law or social expectation. It was about choosing to love, choosing to stay, choosing to fight for what mattered. And what mattered was here in her arms and beside her. What mattered was the life they'd built from broken pieces and desperate hopes. What mattered was the future stretching out before them, full of possibility and promise and the kind of happiness that came from surviving the unsurvivable and coming out stronger on the other side. The mountains stood silent and eternal around them, and the stars blazed overhead, and somewhere in Cedar Ridge, people who'd sent her here to fail were going about their small lives, never knowing that their cruelty had accidentally given Anna Monroe exactly what she'd needed. A home, a family, a love that laughed in the face of every curse they'd tried to lay on her. And as she carried Elizabeth inside and tucked her into the bed that was now permanently hers, as she lay down beside Jack and felt his arms come around her, Anna knew with absolute certainty that she'd won. Not because she'd proven anyone wrong, not because she'd overcome some impossible obstacle, but because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Love, real, chosen, fought for love, was stronger than any curse, stronger than loss, than grief, than the cruelest intentions of cruel people. Love was what survived when everything else burned away. Love was what built homes from houses and families from strangers and hope from despair. Love was what had saved her. Love was what had brought her daughter home. Love was what would carry them through whatever came next. And that, Anna thought as sleep claimed her, was more than enough. That was everything. The joke was on everyone who'd thought exile would break her, because in being cast out, she'd found exactly where she belonged. In losing everything, she'd gained more than she'd ever imagined. In being called cursed, she'd stumbled into the greatest blessing of her life. The cursed widow and the hermit rancher had built an empire of love from nothing but determination and hope. And they would defend it, nurture it, and pass it on to the children who'd made it real. Together, always together. The end had become a beginning, and the beginning promised forever.